What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. Today, we're going to jump back over to Marvel Comics, and we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I take a bunch of storylines, or a bunch of videos, that tell an overarching story and put all those videos together to give you a complete story in one single video. Today, we're going to do Miles Morales in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. That means from Ultimate Comic Spider-Man Volume 2, Number 1, all the way up to Ultimate End. Now, the only storyline will not be in this video will be Ultimate Catalysm Spider-Man, because technically, we never finished covering that storyline. So, it will be left out of this video. But either way, here is Ultimate Spider-Man's full story, Miles Morales. The story begins with us picking up 11 months ago before the present day, where we pick up with Norman Osborn. This is a very important thing because we see him looking at his different spiders that he has done experiments on. As you know, when it comes to Peter Parker in this universe, one spider escaped and of course bit Peter Parker, except this is a different spider that had escaped from Oscorp Labs. And this is of course going to be the spider that will bite Miles Morales and make him the new Spider-Man in this universe. The big question is, how does this spider end up biting Miles in the first place if Miles never visited Oscorp Labs? Well, it comes with the idea of the fact that after Norman Osborn turned himself into the Green Goblin, we pick up with the character known as the Prowler. Now, in the main Marvel universe, the Prowler was a guy named Hobie Brown, who invented tech to be a thief as a way to make quick money. Now, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, it is not Hobie Brown. Instead, it's a guy named Aaron Davis, who is also a thief, where we see him breaking into Oscorp that has been abandoned since Norman Osborn was arrested for being the Green Goblin. Well, while he was stealing a bunch of different stuff, he was not paying attention to the spider that escaped crawling into his bag, where of course he leaves with the spider without knowing. Then we finally pick up with Miles Morales, and this is a very important moment of the book because we see him and his parents Rio Morales and Jefferson Davis walking into a building hoping that Miles will be able to get into this boarding school. Now, the only way to get into this boarding school is to have amazing grades, pass their tests, but also have your name called in a lottery. And so with the fact you have the grades and pass the test, you can still be turned away for not having your name called at the lottery. Luckily for Miles, his name is called and he gets into the school. Now, after he gets into the school, he goes over to his uncle's house, which is of course Aaron Davis, the man we just saw break into Oscorp, the man whose bag is holding the spider we saw in the beginning of the book. This section is at first used to tell us that Aaron and his brother, who is Miles' father, do not see eye to eye, meaning that something happened between them, where you have Aaron try to explain how great it is for Miles getting into the school, because Aaron and his brother Jefferson never truly had a chance like Miles. But when Aaron walks away, that is when the spider we saw in the beginning of the book comes in and bites Miles, which leads into Miles passing out from the bite. When Miles wakes up, you have Aaron Davis there to see if Miles is okay, except he tells Miles that he had no choice but to call Miles' father because he passed out of nowhere. When Miles' father gets there, of course, this begins an argument between the two of them, and we learn that Miles' father does not want Miles seeing his Uncle Aaron at all, mainly because Jefferson knows what Aaron does. But with the two of them arguing, it was too much for Miles to watch, so he leaves the apartment completely. Now you have Jefferson leave as well to go find his son, because Miles is only like 12 or 13 years old. The problem is that when Jefferson goes outside to find Miles, he can't see him because Miles' powers have activated, which is Miles' camouflage power. Now with Miles seeing that he has powers, of course he freaks out and has no idea what to do and what is going on, so he just runs down the street. But this is the moment where we learn more about his powers. He does have enhanced agility, strength, but the biggest two things we see are powers that Peter Parker never had. The first one is seeing again that he has the ability to camouflage. Now the second power shows itself when it comes to Miles being surrounded by some bullies who want to pick on him for just being there really. Except when he touches one of the guys, his Venom shock powers activate and temporarily paralyze the kid for a brief moment. But after that, he goes over to his best friend's house and gives us the first appearance of Genki, a character a lot of people actually love when it comes to the Miles Morales comics. Now the reason why Miles came here is because he needed to show someone he has powers now, and the only person he thinks he can trust is his best friend Genki. And so you have Miles show him all of the different abilities he has now, but also tells Genki that he was bitten by a spider. Now Miles is scared to tell Genki. He is afraid to tell anyone else because they might try to tie him into being a mutant. And the reason why, because at this point, being a mutant is illegal. But the section closes with Miles' father coming in and taking Miles home with him so they can talk. And so you have Jefferson sit down and talk to Miles about why he does not want him to see his Uncle Aaron, but also the fact how important it is for him to see Miles succeed in life. For Jefferson and his brother Aaron, they were both thieves when they were younger, except Jefferson realized that he had to get out of the life, especially when he met his wife Rio, who is Miles' mother, and of course when Miles came around. Except for Aaron, he stayed in that life, and Jefferson does not want his son to be part of that life. And so he's trying to establish in Miles to do the right thing. Now, even though this is a very sweet moment for these two characters, we learn that Jefferson hates people who has powers. And this is important really because it makes Miles consider not to tell his father about his new powers. Later on that night, you have Miles get a text from Genki talking about the idea of him not being a mutant, that with the powers Miles showed, it seemed very similar to what a spider can do in different ways. And so you have Genki ask Miles if he can stick to walls, and Genki points out that Spider-Man was bitten by a spider as well. With that being said, you have Miles try to see if he can stick to walls, where of course he can stick to walls, and this leads into Miles knowing that he has spider powers. He is not a mutant. Of course, later that night, you have Genki come over to see Miles' new powers in action. Now, by this point, we are right after Ultimatum, I want to say. But getting back to the point of the story, at this moment, you have Genki excited by the fact that Miles has powers. But Miles, of course, is still scared about his powers, still afraid that he might get thrown into a camp or something. But then you have Genki point out that they need to figure out where the spider came from. The only person who might know is Aaron, Miles' uncle, except Miles told his father he would not see Aaron anymore. But at this point, they do not really have a choice here. They need answers right at this moment. Except when they get over to Aaron's place and knock on his door, they get no answer, but the door is unlocked. And so you have the two of them walk into the apartment to see that Aaron is gone. The man packed up everything in a matter of hours and he was gone in the wind. And so the only person who may have an answer on what happened to Miles is now gone. And so now they have no idea where to get answers from. Now on the way home, they see a bunch of fire trucks heading towards something around the corner, where of course for Miles and Genki, they just have to know what is going on. So they rush over to see a building on fire, and there are people who are still trapped inside the building. And so you have Miles decide that he can use his powers to help the people who are trapped in the building. First being a mother who he just throws out of the window, and luckily there is a landing pad on the ground, but he sees someone else still trapped inside, so he goes deeper into the building to save her, and he does. This makes Miles happy to see him use his powers to save the lives of other people, using his powers for a good reason. Except after he does that, you have him hiding in an alley crying, where Genki finds him, and this begins a conversation that Miles tells us that he's too scared to use his powers, that what he did was great and all, but he does not believe he can do that again. So this is the moment where you have Miles decide that he would not use his powers ever again. The idea of him being a hero is too much for him to handle. Then we get to see Miles Morales at his new school, and this is a very important moment because when we see him and Genki get their room, they also get a third roommate, which is Judge. But the point of this is after Miles has spent some time in his new boarding school, we see him having a nightmare where he is afraid that some supervillain would come after him. This dream, we see Electro is the bad guy that kills him. So he wakes up, but when he does wake up at that moment, he, Genki, and Judge are told they are having an emergency drill. The reason why is because Spider-Man has been shot. And we are now at the moment where the death of Spider-Man takes place. Now, of course, you have everyone freaking out because at this point in Ultimate Marvel, the city of New York loves Spider-Man. They don't love every hero, but they loved Spider-Man. But getting back to the main point, you have Miles lead the school so he can see if he can help Spider-Man out with the Sinister Six. Except when Miles gets there, of course, he comes in at the very last second, where Peter Parker dies in the arm of Aunt May. And this was hard to read again because we are just reliving the death of Spider-Man all over again. Now this is Bendis retconning that Miles was there and actually had a conversation with Gwen Stacy after Peter died, where she tells him that his name was Peter Parker and it sticks to Miles Morales for the rest of his life. What I mean by that is you have Miles the next day just thinking about Peter, and the reason why is because Miles felt like he should have been another Spider-Man when he got his powers. Instead, he hid his powers, focused on school, and a few weeks later, Peter Parker died. To him, if he had accepted his powers and used them, he could have helped Peter Parker fight against those villains. And you have Genki tell Miles that he has to realize that maybe he was Spider-Man to pop up to replace Peter to keep the mantle going. The city still needs Spider-Man, and it will be Miles. Miles keeps that thought on his mind, but he wants to know why Peter Parker became Spider-Man. So Miles and Genki goes to the funeral, and you have Miles ask Gwen Stacy why did Peter do it? And you have Gwen Stacy just snapped at Miles and Genki by telling him how Peter's Uncle Ben installed everyone's favorite line, "With great power comes great responsibility." And that line right there is now installed in Miles' mind, where it gives Miles that drive to become the new Spider-Man, to replace Peter Parker and help the world out being the new Spider-Man. So later that day, we see Miles getting a costume from Genki, where of course it is the one we saw in Ultimate Fallout, that Genki wore this outfit for Halloween before, and now giving it to Miles to begin his time as the new Spider-Man. Now, we are going to skip over the next few pages because those pages are just a recap on what happened in Ultimate Fallout number 4. Miles becomes Spider-Man for the first time and fights against a villain named Kangaroo and defeats him. And that is it for this moment. And with that, we can skip to the closing part of chapter 4. Because the next day when Miles goes back out there to be Spider-Man one more time and thinking that this night will be better than the other nights, that is when Miles is confronted by Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman. And this is a very important moment for Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Woman is here because she is one of the clones of Peter Parker in this universe. So when she sees someone going around pretending to be like her brother, well, she wants to know who it is. And this is Miles quickly learning that he's not ready for the big leagues just yet, because you have Spider-Woman being able to overpower him multiple times, take off his mask, and then Spider-Woman was able to knock him out. With her doing all of that, she gathers that this is not another Peter Parker clone, that it is just some kid pretending to be a hero. Where of course she takes Miles back to the Triskelion, and where you have Hawkeye, Nick Fury, Iron Man, and her in shock that there is another Spider-Man, where you have Iron Man confirm that his genes have been altered kind of like Jessica Drew and Peter Parker, but just a little bit different, and could be referring to the idea of Miles having different powers. But then you have Nick Fury ask everyone to leave so he can talk to Miles one-on-one. And this is a very important moment for Nick Fury, because to Nick, Peter was like a son to him. So when Peter died, he feels like he failed as a father in a way. So seeing Miles right here in front of him, it is like a redo for Nick, but more of the way of thinking about grounding Miles until he is older and then take him in. Now Nick Fury lets us know that he knows a lot about Miles as well, which just shows off his abilities to be a top spy. He kind of has an idea about how Miles got his powers, but Miles fills in some of the holes of the story of his powers for Nick. Except this is the moment you have Bendis bring in another bad guy for Miles to fight, except someone who would give Miles a challenge. This would be Electro. Now, when we last saw him, he was shot by Aunt May in the Death of Spider-Man story. Well, he is alive, and when he remembers what happened, but also learn where he is at, this makes him use his powers and begin the process of blowing up the place. Now with that happening, you have some of the Ultimates try to stop Electro, where you would think that these guys who are well-trained heroes should beat him easily, since Peter Parker was able to beat him multiple times. But for the sake of the story, we see them getting their butt kicked, and Nick Fury is freaking out since he has no plans on to stop Electro here. But that is when you have Miles go in, sneak behind Electro, and use his Venom blast to short circuit Electro, and giving Nick Fury the chance to shoot Electro to wrap this up very quickly. But this is an amazing moment for Miles, because now you will have Nick Fury consider letting Miles be a hero. But the story closes on with the next day. You have Genki and Miles hanging out, where of course you have Miles telling Genki everything that happened. But while walking around the school, he is confronted by Spider-Woman just being Jessica Drew. This is the moment Miles learns that Nick Fury has given his blessing to Miles to be the new Spider-Man. And by showing that he is giving his blessing, you have Spider-Woman give a gift to Miles from Nick Fury, which is his own Spider-Man outfit. And this is an amazing moment for Miles Morales because he goes out to be the new Spider-Man of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. With this volume, we pick up with Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles Morales. Remember, in our first video, we found out that Aaron Davis had disappeared and no one knew where he went to. Well, he went to Mexico. The reason why is because, one, this is Brian Michael Bendis giving us a new Scorpion in this universe, since the last one is not going to be used anymore. But to also give us the reason why Aaron Davis broke into Oscorp back in our last video. Scorpion is this kingpin character in Mexico who hired Aaron Davis, who is the Prowler in this universe, to steal something from Oscorp that apparently belongs to him, except of course Prowler does not have it. But we pick up with Miles Morales, and this is showing us him enjoying being Spider-Man now. Because in the last video he was scared, but now he is trying to enjoy the idea of it, where we see him trying to fight against some crooks in the city, trying to steal an old lady purse, where of course he comes down and he struggles at first since he is still a new hero. But of course, once he is able to get the hang of it, he is able to beat these crooks. Now, the important part of this section is when the police come and make him leave the scene. Betty Brant is there, who used to work for the Daily Bugle. Well, she takes a picture of Miles Morales and she is going to use it as proof to show the world that there is a new Spider-Man in town, but to also get her job back. Now we jump back to Aaron Davis in Mexico again, who is meeting up with the Scorpion, where Scorpion is asking for what he hired the Prowler for, but Prowler wants his money first. So Scorpion is nice enough to give him the money, but that is when Prowler decides to double-cross Scorpion by stabbing him. Except this is where we learn that Scorpion may have some kind of power, because with the Prowler stabbing him, nothing happens. And this makes Aaron Davis run away, except he runs into the police down there and gets arrested. Back to Miles, we see him coming home for the weekend because he is at boarding school where he lives on school grounds throughout the weekdays. Then on weekends, he is back at home. This leads into a conversation he has with his mom, because in our last video, Miles' father told him about how he and Aaron Davis used to be crooks, but Miles' father got out of that life. Now the reason why this is being brought up again is because when Miles was younger, his parents told him that line about how he has part of them inside of him. So he is scared that he might have the bad side of his father inside of him because he sees his father being a bad guy in a way. This conversation is interrupted by Genki coming over to give Miles something. Really, it is just Genki giving Miles the Spider-Man movie that was made in this universe. We covered that a while back, but tells Miles he needs to watch this movie to learn how to fight like Peter Parker did. Then the last 2 pages of this chapter is more of word getting out to the world about a new Spider-Man. Betty Brant goes back to Jonah at the Daily Bugle showing proof of a new Spider-Man, begging to get her job back. But in Mexico with Aaron Davis, he sees a newspaper about Spider-Man and wonders why in the world is the paper talking about a new Spider-Man. More determined for him to get back to figure out what is going on in New York City. Now you have Bendis reminding us another thing about Miles' father, which is the idea of Miles' father, Jefferson, does not like superheroes. This is not him being hateful towards mutants, but to everyone who has powers. This is shown when the Daily Bugle paper shows Miles being Spider-Man and continues to bash the idea of heroes. But you do have Miles' mother kind of on his side and her showing her love for his Spider-Man alter ego. And so you have Miles leave and go out into the city, swinging around as Spider-Man. Now we have to remember that Miles Morales does not have web shooters. He only has the basic spider powers right now. He will get the web shooters soon, but this is him realizing he needs to test the limit of his powers. So he goes out to see what he can do. But also, he needs to clear his head after seeing another example of how much his father hates superheroes. Of course, this is the moment where he sees an explosion out in the middle of the city. And so he goes to see what the explosion is all about, where he comes to find out it is Omega Red. We saw this character a couple times in this universe, and he was used in those books as a way to support the main plot point, but not this time. This is where we learn that somehow Aaron Davis was able to get out of jail in Mexico, and he is back in New York visiting with the Thinker, the guy in this universe who makes different tech for people to use, where Aaron Davis asks a question about the new Spider-Man and also gives the origin of the last one. How Osborn made these spiders that went and bit Peter Parker and made him Spider-Man. That these spiders had numbers on them. Of course, this is where Aaron Davis remembers about the spider that bitten his nephew Miles Morales. That spider had a number on it, and of course it bitten Miles. And so he puts it together that Miles is the new Spider-Man. And so to make sure word does not get out, he kills off the Thinker. We could jump back and focus on Miles being Spider-Man fighting against Omega Red, but honestly, it is nothing important. It is just someone to fight against Miles, and Omega Red thinks that Miles is Peter Parker, and so he really wants to kill Miles because of that, where of course Miles wins, and that is really it for this section. No, we don't see Omega Red again in this book. But after winning that fight, he goes back to school and meets up with his best friend Genki, where Genki is so excited about hearing that Miles was able to defeat Omega Red. But this fun moment is ruined when he is greeted by his uncle, Aaron Davis, at the front of the school. Then we pick up in Paris, where if you remember, after the funeral of Peter Parker, Tony Stark gave Aunt May and Gwen Stacy the ability to live somewhere away from New York, so they can get away from all of the drama about Spider-Man, where we see them and they are actually at peace with everything, except they see the news about Miles Morales being Spider-Man, which we can tell in their faces they are not happy about this at all. But back to focusing on Miles Morales and Aaron Davis, you have Miles tell Genki to leave so he can talk to his uncle alone. Now this was kind of obvious that this was going to happen in this book, where you have Aaron Davis coming to Miles' school for one to tell him that he knows, but to also begin the process of blackmailing Miles to help with some certain things. And you can tell right off the bat, it is most likely to deal with this new Scorpion Kingpin that could come to New York from Mexico. Before they are able to discuss more about this, you have the principal of the school ask Aaron Davis to leave the campus. Now we do get reintroduced to Frank Quad, and he was a character that was introduced in the post-Ultimatum Ultimate Spider-Man run, the one before this one, and he is the new captain of the police force, who kind of worked with Peter Parker before he died, where we see him talking to the Kangaroo, another character we met before who Miles Morales actually defeated. This point of this section is more than just talking about the fact that there is a new Spider-Man out in the world. In the Brooklyn area, we pick up with a few members of gang leaders having a poker night, where this seems like a normal thing, except that is when they are attacked by the Scorpion. He is here in New York, where of course he is looking for Aaron Davis for double-crossing him, where these mobsters agreed to help him after being beat down by him. This is also the moment where you had a Scorpion decide that this is going to be his new place of business. He will become the new kingpin of New York. The next day, we pick up with Miles Morales, who is out again being Spider-Man. But just like Omega Red, he has another villain he has to fight against, which this time it is going to be the Ringer. This is a villain that I don't understand why there are fans that like him. But this is just Miles Morales once again fighting a villain that he is able to beat. Him slowly learning how to fight against super villains. But after beating the Ringer, he is greeted by Frank Quad, where you have Frank Quad asking to talk. This is an important meeting because it is Frank Quad trying to figure out what Miles Morales' deal is. Can he trust him? Is this going to be another strange relationship with another Spider-Man? But he can clearly tell that this Spider-Man is younger than the last one and wants to make sure that this kid realizes what he is getting himself into. And you are trying to be a hero, but being a hero is not easy. So finally, you have Frank Quad tell Miles to leave before he is arrested. Focusing back on Aaron Davis again, where we see that after he left Miles' school, he went to one of his old bases that apparently the Scorpion knows about, because that is when he is confronted by Scorpion. This is where we learn that Scorpion has superhuman strength, super durability, and a healing factor. But again, Scorpion is here because Aaron Davis double-crossed him. Now this hideout is actually an old hideout of the Thinker, meaning that there is tech that Aaron Davis used to help him fight against the Scorpion before he is killed off by him. The fight does last for a few pages, but ends with Aaron Davis leaving when he was able to get the chance. This section closes with Miles getting back to school and thinking about his discussion he had with Aaron Davis, where it is Miles thinking about helping his uncle, hearing what his uncle wants to talk about, and also maybe his uncle can help him with different things. With him thinking that, Miles gets a text from his uncle, with his uncle asking him about if he is down to help. And we see that Miles agreeing to meet up with Aaron Davis. Now, the final chapter of this book is more of Miles and Aaron Davis kind of talking about the origin of Miles' power, where it is Miles getting confirmation about where his powers came from, but also shows him that Aaron Davis was able to figure out that he is the new Spider-Man. This is where Aaron Davis wants to know what Miles can do and can't do, and so he wants to fight against Miles. Miles is confused about Aaron Davis doing this to learn about his powers, but also it is Miles finally going up against someone who is a good fighter. Before Aaron Davis, it was people who just had enhanced powers who fought with just brute strategy. But for Aaron Davis, he is a fighter. He knows how to move. And so it is another learning lesson for Miles Morales to be a superhero. This does end with Miles showing Aaron Davis about the fact that he has the Venom shock power. This transitions into Aaron Davis continuing the process of blackmailing Miles Morales into helping him, which we can tell it is going to be him asking Miles to help dealing with the Scorpion problem, how Scorpion is a bad guy, and if Miles helps him to take him down, it will bring a high level of fame to Miles Morales because of the fact that the Scorpion is a kingpin in Mexico. Now Miles says no at first, but then you have him play the card, I will tell your father, because remember, Miles' father Jefferson hates heroes. So what will Jefferson do when he finds out his son is a hero? So Miles leaves, but Aaron can tell that Miles is going to help him. Now, there are a few pages of Miles going around thinking about what to do. He thinks about going to the Ultimates to turn in his uncle, but he doesn't. Also, he goes to school and Genki can tell that something is wrong with Miles, but Miles does not really open up to him. When the weekend comes, Miles' parents can tell as well that something is wrong with him, but again, he does not say anything. The story closes on Miles texting his uncle and talking about actually helping out with taking down the Scorpion, and that will take place in our next video. And this Now, the book gives us one page to remind us and show us how close Miles Morales and his uncle Aaron Davis were. Of course, this was 5 years ago, but now in the present day, everything is different between them. Mainly because Miles learned that his uncle is this thief named the Prowler, and Prowler had learned that Miles is the new Spider-Man. With him knowing that, Prowler blackmailed Miles to help him take down a kingpin from Mexico named Scorpion, by saying that if Miles does not help, Aaron will tell Miles' father about him being the new Spider-Man. The reason why he wants Miles to help is because Aaron Davis owes Scorpion some money. Of course, we pick up in the present day and we see Miles and Prowler watching Scorpion chilling in a club talking about being the new kingpin of New York. How he was the only person brave enough to stand up to the idea of being the new kingpin. After his big speech, of course, he is confronted by Miles and the Prowler, where Prowler talks about stopping Scorpion being the new kingpin, and this leads into a big battle between the two sides. Honestly, most of this book is just the two of them fighting against Scorpion, which is not a bad thing, because it is Miles Morales learning how to handle another villain. It is him getting a crash course on how to be a hero. There's a few funny moments where Miles keeps thinking that he has taken down the Scorpion, only to see Scorpion keep getting back up. Which honestly, it is the same for Scorpion 2, where he thinks that every time he has taken down Miles, Miles keeps getting back up to surprise attack the Scorpion. But this fight ends with Miles actually being able to hand over Scorpion to the police. When he gets back inside the club, Prowler disappears because the cops had arrived. Now Miles goes back home, which is a dorm room at his school, where Miles is greeted by Genki talking about the reports of the Scorpion being captured. Before Miles is able to explain to Genki about what happened with the Scorpion, Miles' phone rings, and of course it is his uncle going on with the idea of blackmailing Miles, where Miles tries to end the deal with his uncle, and his uncle threatens to tell Miles' father about Miles being the new Spider-Man. Then we get reminded about May and Gwen Stacy, who was living in France. Remember, in Ultimate Fallout, after the funeral of Peter Parker, they decided that they needed to leave New York for a while, and they went to France, which of course they were enjoying their time there, but saw a newspaper about Miles being the new Spider-Man. And so they came back to New York and called up Tony Stark and asked him to find them the new Spider-Man so they can have a small chat with Miles Morales. Focusing back on the idea of Aaron Davis blackmailing his own nephew, we see that Miles has been ignoring Aaron Davis' texts. but the longer he does it, we can see that Aaron Davis is getting more upset at Miles. Miles watches his uncle using his ability to turn invisible, but also can tell his uncle is getting upset with him. We transition back to Miles' school the next day, and we see that Miles is having a hard time figuring out what to do with his uncle. Should he tell his parents, or should he run to the Ultimates, or should he just work with his uncle? Of course, he vents to Genki since it is the only person he can talk to about this, where of course Genki tells him the truth that his uncle is not going to stop. And sooner or later, he is going to have to fight Aaron Davis. But Miles also decided that he is going to go home and tell his parents about him being the new Spider-Man. Except when he gets back home to his house, outside the house is Aaron Davis waiting for Miles. But it is Aaron Davis again angry at Miles, but this time more saying that he could possibly do harm towards Miles. Then promise again that if Miles works with him, then they can have great success. Finally, Miles agrees to meet with Aaron Davis later on and goes inside his house. Now, the second half of this book is more of Miles meeting up with Aaron Davis, and where Aaron Davis thinks that Miles is officially down to work with him, Miles surprises him with saying no, that their deal is over. Of course, this is Aaron Davis getting upset and beginning to fight against Miles. Where the next few pages are Miles and Aaron Davis fighting in the middle of the city. But this time, it is not Aaron Davis training Miles. It is Aaron Davis upset with the fact his young nephew does not want to be a crook like him. Now, this is or was the iconic moment where Miles Morales had placed a Venom shock in one of Aaron Davis' gauntlets. And so when it went off, of course, it blew up Aaron Davis' suit completely. Of course, it was not something Miles was trying to do to his uncle. He just wanted to stop his uncle. But that was the outcome of him using the Venom blast, where the story ends with seems to be the death of Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles Morales, who died by the hands of Miles Morales. And this is where we're going to end. So getting back into Divided We Fall, United We Stand, we're going to pick up with Miles Morales. The reason why we are picking up with him last is because his story actually begins when Captain America comes back to the Ultimates. Of course, this is the point where Captain America finds out about Miles Morales being the new Spider-Man. You have to remember that Captain America blames himself for the death of Peter Parker. So seeing another Spider-Man but younger, it really bothers him. Even though you have Tony Stark trying to vouch for Tony, of course, to Captain America, it is still a no. Tony Stark thinks that Captain America should talk to Miles to get to know Miles more. But after saying that, that is when the news reports about Miles Morales being a murderer. Remember, in our last video, Miles Morales had to fight against his uncle, who was the Prowler in this universe. Their fight ended with Prowler dying because Miles used his Venom shock powers that short-circuit Prowler's suit and made it explode. So we're picking up with Miles' father coming to him and telling him that his uncle is officially dead now. Miles hates himself because he thinks it is his fault that his uncle died. But then you have his father say something that is going to mess up Miles even more. Remember that Miles' father hates superheroes. So he goes on to say some stuff that really shows his hatred towards superheroes. When Miles walks around the city, of course, he is seeing posters of himself all over the city, where they are calling Spider-Man a murderer, and it really bothers him. Then we proceed to him and Genki arriving at school, and this is the moment that is going to set up a few things. The first being that Judge, Miles' other roommate, is beginning to hate Miles and Genki because they're always hiding stuff from him and he feels left out. So he tells them that he is going to request to have a new room. But then after that, Miles gets a phone call. Now the way this video has been going, you would think it is Captain America calling up Miles Morales, except it is not. And when you see who it is, you are going to remember back to an older video. Before we can even see Miles meet the person that was calling him, we actually have him running into another new villain in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, which is Batroc the Leaper. I know I just butchered that name. A true D-list character, and I don't care what anyone says, he is a D-list character. As you can see here, he has the ability to just leap very well. This is again for Miles to get a small group of villains to be in his rogue gallery. Also to show to Captain America if Miles has what it takes to be a hero. Because throughout the fight, Miles was causing some major property damage and being a little reckless. But after the fight, we see Miles was being watched by Captain America. It's Captain America trying to learn more about Miles Morales. Now we skip over to Miles going to a warehouse. Of course, this being the warehouse where he was told to meet up with the person who called him. This is where we find out it was Aunt May and Gwen Stacy. Remember that back in our previous video, they were in France to get away from all the drama surrounding the death of Peter Parker, except they saw the news about Miles Morales being the new Spider-Man. So they came back to New York to talk to him, to give him something that belonged to Peter Parker when he was Spider-Man. Before they can though, you have Captain America appear saying he disagrees with what she's about to give Miles Morales. Of course, you had the same conversation happening all over again, where you have Steve Rogers telling Miles Morales he should not be Spider-Man. You have Gwen Stacy, Aunt May, and Miles Morales telling him that he is wrong. Again, this is Steve Rogers just beating himself up with the idea that he messed up because he did not train Peter Parker and Peter Parker died. And you have Gwen Stacy telling Captain America that he cannot punish himself and others for the death of Peter Parker. Mary Jane even appears as well to show that she is on the side of letting Miles Morales be the new Spider-Man. You still have Captain America thinking that Miles is just too young to be a hero in this world. In the middle of their conversation, you have Captain America getting a call from someone about something going on in the city, where you have Steve Rogers leave, but before he leaves, you have him tell if he sees Miles Morales out there being Spider-Man again, he will take him down. Then he leaves. But you have Aunt May and Gwen Stacy show Miles what they were going to give him before Captain America interrupted earlier. It is Peter Parker's web shooters. Remember, Miles has not shown us his version of webbing. This is why he needs web shooters. But this is Aunt May giving her blessing for Miles to be the new Spider-Man, but also telling him he does not need to listen to anyone. Do what Miles Morales feels what is right to do. This is where we get the moment of seeing Miles Morales trying to learn how to use web shooters for the first time. It is another learning step for Miles. It is showing the constant growth that Miles has been going through in this entire series. We are still going to see it, but this is a nice pace for a young hero learning how to be the new Spider-Man in the world. Now we learn what is happening in the city that made Captain America leave. which is the fact that Rhino is in the city. Remember that Rhino is a character who is not really a big time villain like he is in the main Marvel universe. More of just a villain used to move the story forward, where we see Captain America trying to beat down on Rhino, but he is struggling. So you have Miles Morales aside to jump in and give Captain America a hand to beat down on Rhino, where this book closes on Miles Morales being able to take down Rhino. It does cause a lot of damage, but in the process of taking down Rhino, he saved people and Captain America lives. You have Captain America agree that Miles Morales can be the new Spider-Man, just needs a little bit more training. And this is where we So starting off this video, we actually kind of start off with the book being funny, where you have Genki, the best friend of Miles, trying to explain to Miles that he found a way to make Miles the most popular hero in the world, just being the goofy character in the book, and honestly to me, it is not that important, it's just fun to see. It just shows that Miles' life is not always dark and crazy. He has some bright moments in his life, like Genki. This proceeds on to Miles showing Genki what he got from Aunt May and Gwen Stacy in our last Ultimate Comic Spider-Man video. This section is reminding us that Aunt May did give Miles Peter Parker web shooters as a way to say that she is giving her blessing for Miles to be the new Spider-Man. Also, that was when Captain America tried his best to stop Miles from being the new Spider-Man, only for Aunt May to tell Miles to follow his heart and be the new Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But we also see that Miles realized that he will need more web fluid for the web shooter soon. So he asked Genki to help make him some new web fluids for his web shooter. We then see Miles go home after school, where he sees a ton of police cars outside and of course would make anyone scared. So he runs in to find Maria Hill. This is our first time being introduced to Maria Hill in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, where we see her right now asking questions about Aaron Davis, the uncle of Miles, who was the Prowler and had died a couple stories ago. So the big question is right now is seeing how much Miles knows about his uncle. Also, this is Maria Hill kind of telling Miles that he is actually innocent. Because remember, when Miles fought his uncle, his Venom shock had gone off, and it did blow up the tech suit of Prowler, except you have Maria Hill state that the suit actually had some technical issues. So when he used his Venom shock, it actually wasn't his fault for the death of his uncle. It was actually the suit just not being taken care of properly. At the same time, it is Maria Hill kind of showing that she may think there is something more to Miles Morales that he is not telling, but she does leave. Of course, we go back to Miles and Genki again at school, where Miles is telling Genki about him being cleared as a murderer, that he did not murder his uncle, but also that it should help ease the mind of Captain America as well, since Captain America still thinks Miles should not be a hero. Then finally, you have the actions of Divided We Fall, United We Stand finally take full effect in Miles Morales comics, where Miles and Genki's school is going to close down because the nation as a whole is not safe at the moment and school is putting the kids at risk. Now Miles is happy with the fact that now he will have the ability to go out and be Spider-Man more often without worrying about school. This leads into the idea Miles has, or really the idea Genki told Miles about, that Miles should join the Ultimates, which is different from Peter Parker, because Peter Parker never wanted to join the Ultimates. Well, he had thoughts about it, but he never took the steps to go forward with it. Honestly, it wasn't until Carol Danvers made the Ultimates train him to be a better hero. Well, try to. Either way, Miles goes over to the Triskelion, the home base of both S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimates. Of course, when he arrives there, he runs into security, and luckily for him, Captain America was there to save him, and he tells Captain America that he wants to join the Ultimates. Before we get the chance to see Captain America's reaction to him being there at the Triskelion, we jump over to Jefferson, the father to Miles, where he is trying to go home, but the section he lives in is closed off, which then he tries to fight his way home to see if his wife and son are home. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents ask him to turn away, but he keeps trying to fight them to get to his family, which now he is disobeying S.H.I.E.L.D. agent orders, so they arrest him for disobeying orders. Now getting back to Miles Morales and Captain America, we can see that Captain America is angry at Miles for coming to the Triskelion unannounced. Before he is able to finish yelling at Miles, someone attacks the Triskelion, which of course means that now Miles Morales actually has to help with protecting the place. Like I said, everything from Divided We Fall, United We Stand event is finally taking full effect in Miles Morales comics. The reason why I say that is because we find out that the group who is attacking the Triskelion is no other than Hydra. Remember, in our Ultimates video earlier, Hydra was reformed and is trying to overthrow the government. In that video, Modi, the son of Thor, had begun the process of actually helping them get what they want, which is to basically take over the government. As we can see here, they are coming out with different kinds of weapons and tech to use to help them take over the Triskelion, but they still have to fight Captain America and Spider-Man. Honestly, this is the book where you kind of have Captain America realize that he was wrong about Miles Morales. At the same time, this is Brian Michael Bendis, the writer of the book, sending a message in this book. When Miles came out in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, a lot of people did not like him, mainly because a lot of people actually grew up with Peter Parker in this universe. So when it came to Miles taking over, people were angry, but Bendis is telling folks that Miles is going nowhere. He is actually just as capable of being Spider-Man like Peter Parker was. Maybe even better. Getting back to the story, we see Miles and Captain America being able to actually stop the Hydra group from taking over the Triskelion. Now after the battle is done, we see Captain America admit that he was wrong about Spider-Man, that Spider-Man does have what it takes to be part of the Ultimates. So Miles is now part of the Ultimates team. Even if Spider-Woman, aka Jessica Drew, who is also a clone of Peter Parker, is upset with Miles joining the team, but the big thing about this section is when we actually pick up with Captain America being sworn into office. Remember, in our Ultimates video, he won the election. So now, Captain America is the president of the United States of America. And this is where we are going to end today's video. So please, so the way this book opens up, we actually pick up with Miles Morales. But we can see that he is stuck in the middle of a random field. The question is, how in the world did our young hero get stuck in the middle of the field? What led him here? And why aren't the Ultimates remembering about him if we are seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. planes fly away from the field that Miles Morales is stuck in? That is when we jump back 4 hours and we see Miles is surrounded by the Ultimates and some other heroes in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, where this team will be going in to support Captain America and Thor in Wyoming. Remember, in our last Ultimates video, Thor's son Modi led Hydra to Project Pegasus to steal a lot of high-tech weapons, so they are going there to stop him. But we also see Hawkeye putting Spider-Woman and Miles Morales on the same team, and Spider-Woman hates Miles Morales, so she tries her best to get a new partner, only for Hawkeye to say no. Before we're able to explore that, we see all of the heroes jump into the big battle that we are going to see again in the future Ultimates video. We establish quickly that Miles Morales is way over his head being here. That yes, he has the other heroes around him to protect and support him, but he is still very inexperienced to be here in this big civil war for America. So we see him getting blasted all over the place. We then jump back over to Brooklyn, where we establish here that this scene takes place 3 hours before the present day. Remember that Miles Morales' father Jefferson was arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents for disobeying their orders. So we see him in the back of their truck being transported to who knows where. Except out of nowhere, the truck gets flipped over. And the big question is, what caused the truck to flip over? Where we find out it was a group of Hydra agents, and they are claiming that they have taken over New York. With them here, they give Jefferson and the men he was with an option: join them or just go home. That is when Jefferson watches them shoot one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in cold blood. Getting back over to the war with Miles Morales and the rest of the heroes of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, we actually pick up with him working alongside Spider-Woman in the middle of the fight, and he is trying to figure out why she hates him so much. But she tells him that she does not hate him. She really believes that he does not belong here at all. Remember that Spider-Woman is the clone of Peter Parker in this universe, and even though they weren't that close, she does not like the idea of someone taking up the name Spider-Man that used to belong to Peter Parker. Or it could be the fact that she really believes that Miles Morales should not be anywhere close to this kind of battle. He should be home away from all of this. Jumping back over to Miles Morales' father Jefferson, we see him at home, where he is confronted by Miles Morales' mother. She is wondering where in the world her son is. Is her husband okay? Except that is when she sees that her husband is holding onto a gun, wondering why in the world he is holding onto a gun for. What has been going on here in that part of town since she's been away? We then finally get to the point where we close on today's video, where we see that Miles Morales is still fighting alongside Spider-Woman, where she still wants him to leave this battle. Of course, he ignores what she is saying, but he then sees that one of the War Machine suits is under control of Hydra, is planning to kill Captain America. So Miles decides that he must stop that War Machine armor, which leads into a set of panels where we watch him succeed in stopping it, except it explains why he was left behind in the field. The reason why is because after completing his goal, well, he was knocked out, where of course leads us into the present day, where we see him stuck in the middle of the field. And this is where we are going to end today. This is the final issue we are going to cover when it comes to the Ultimate Marvel Divided We Fall, United We Stand event. We pick up with Genki, the best friend of Miles Morales, watching the news about his best friend being one of the heroes in the big battle that happened in Wyoming. So now Genki is wondering if Miles is okay after that battle has ended. So we then jump back over to where Miles is at, where if you guys remember that he was knocked out in the middle of the battle. So when he woke up, most of the S.H.I.E.L.D. team left him behind on the battlefield heading home. This leads into the big issue of the writing of Brian Michael Bendis, where he is someone who does not try to write his stories to fit in with the rest of Marvel Comics at the same time. Also, when he is forced, sometimes his stories still don't line up with the rest of Marvel Comics. The reason why I say that is because in this issue, we see that he is confronted by Giant Woman, aka Cassandra Lang. And see, in the Ultimate Comics, she was controlled by Modi, but she was able to break free from being mind controlled by Modi thanks to the help of Captain America. Well, to Bendis, she did not really. That she was knocked out and basically Miles Morales has to fight against her because she is still under the mind control of Modi. Even though the battle has been over, she is apparently under the control of Modi still. It's weird, but of course they do fight, where it does go back and forth for a while, but the problem is that after trying the Venom shot, thinking that it was going to work, of course he finds out that it does not work all the way, so he ends up being knocked out. We then jump back to the parents of Miles Morales, where we see them talking about what happened to Jefferson in our last video, where he was arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. for disobeying their orders, but then Hydra agents saved him and the men that were also arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra gave Jefferson an option to join them or to leave, but they were hoping that he would join them. Well, Jefferson does the opposite of that, where he actually shoots them and kills those random Hydra agents off. He freaked out because the only thing he wants to have is a normal life, which he is trying to achieve, but his wife reminds him that they need to find Miles. So we jump back over to Miles Morales, who is now being held hostage by a Giant Woman. And it seems like she is taking him back to Hydra, where Miles comes around and actually knocks her out by doing a lovely Venom Shock Blast and Punch combo. So she's out for the count, and now he can refocus on finding a way back home. That is when he is confronted by Spider-Woman, aka Jessica Drew, who tells him that S.H.I.E.L.D. and her have been looking for him. So now he has a way to get back home now. And we see Spider-Woman is actually more concerned for him this time than she was in our last video. That is when we see Spider-Woman take Miles back to the city. And you have Miles trying to talk to Spider-Woman as a way to finally learn who she is and why she cares so much for Peter Parker and why she has been hard on Miles. She tells Miles that for now, they can't talk, that he needs to go home and change and find his parents. In a couple of days, they will talk. Then she proceeds to say that her goal is to watch Miles achieve in life actually. So she is going to support him later on, but for now, just go ahead and go home. To close on this book and this event, we see Miles' parents actually go to visit Genki, and because his parents are looking for Miles since he wasn't home when they were at home, Genki is ready to lie for his friend, except that is when Miles walks in and tells them some kind of story on why he was not at home. They believe him, and the book closes on that point right there. And the next time we see Miles, he is going to fight against Venom. So guys, this is the end of today's video. So we pick up with Betty Brant. Remember, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, Betty Brant is more of a reporter rather than an office assistant to J. Jonah Jameson, where we see her looking over the footage of Miles Morales in the Prowler when they fought back in one of our earlier Miles Morales Spider-Man videos. Where of course in that video we saw the death of Prowler, except before he died he told Miles, "You are just like me." Which then leads us over to the Daily Bugle, where we see J. Jonah Jameson having one of his meetings with everyone about what to put on the paper next. This is when you have Betty Brant speak up and state that she has something that involves the new Spider-Man. She begins to state that with the footage of Prowler and Miles Morales' last fight, she thinks that there is some kind of connection between Prowler and the new Spider-Man because they are both black. Of course, this starts an argument between everyone because they begin to think back to the death of Peter Parker. Jonah shuts everyone up and says until she brings back harder facts, he's not going to publish her story. Of course, she begins her work very quickly by going to the police station to pull in a favor. The favor is hoping to receive from the police officer is the Prowler case file, hoping to get something out of there. With that information, she was able to find the home of Aaron Davis. Well, what used to be the home of Aaron Davis. So after finding a way to send the landlord away, she begins to search around the place, trying to find some clues that can help her find some kind of connection between Spider-Man and the Prowler, which of course she was able to find the spider that actually bit Miles Morales. Of course, she does not know about Miles being bitten by a spider, except now she's on the hunt to find someone who can help her figure out more about the spider. So we see her meeting up with a Dr. Marcus. This man is now working for Roxxon, which of course we all know is a shady company. Except when Betty Brant shows him the spider that she had found, that is when we learn more about him. That apparently he used to work at Oscorp around the same time Norman Osborn made the spider that bit Peter Parker. After Norman Osborn had found out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man thanks to one of his spiders, Norman went back and made more spiders, but was unable to complete the chance of reproducing what happened with Peter. After failing, S.H.I.E.L.D. raided the place and took everything, and possibly this spider somehow got away, which now Betty knows where the spider came from and makes her wants to know more. Now we see Betty Brant go and stalk the home of the Morales, hoping to see who could be the new Spider-Man. We see that Betty Brant thinks that it could actually be Miles' father, Jefferson. So she goes back to the Daily Bugle with all of the information she had gathered, hoping to convince Jonah to run her article, only for him to basically say no, because he's trying to respect Peter Parker. Remember that back in Ultimatum, Jonah saw Peter Parker being a true hero. Then when Peter Parker died months later, it hurt him even more to hear the news of the death of Peter Parker. So to him, what right does he have to run an article that could ruin another family's life? What if everything she gathered comes up false? Then that family's life is ruined even more. So with that being said, Jonah tells Betty Brant that he's not going to run her story, and she leaves angry. Except after she leaves, that is when she runs home. We see her talking on the phone to Ned Leeds. We don't get to see him in this book, except he is helping her find someone who will run her story, which she does, except right when she hangs up the phone, that is when a voice talks to her about profiting off something that does not belong to her. Then she is stabbed, and we come to find out that it is Venom, that Venom has returned and ready to hunt down the new Spider-Man. We finally pick up with Miles Morales, where we see him swinging around New York and still trying to get used to the idea of having web shooters, which of course he wonders when web shooters run out of web fluids, which he quickly finds out right here and begins to fall out of the sky. Ends up embarrassing himself in front of a crowd of people. So we skip over to Miles Morales being in class, where you have him inform Genki that he is out of web fluids. So you have Genki promise Miles that he will be able to make him some more. They were discussing this by using their phones in front of the teacher, who catches them, of course. Now we do go back to somewhere we have not seen in a long time, which is the Oscorp building. It has been abandoned ever since Norman Osborn became the Green Goblin and S.H.I.E.L.D. raided the place. Well, we see that someone had decided to destroy the place, and we come to find out that it was Venom. Now I want you guys to realize that Venom looks very different than he usually does. But getting back to the Daily Bugle, with the death of Betty Brant and her body being found, we see that Maria Hill has come to the Bugle to figure out what happened to Betty Brant. Remember that Maria Hill is a detective in this universe. We saw her in our earlier videos when she was trying to figure out the connection between Spider-Man and the Prowler. She is questioning to see if Jonah has something to do with the recent death, which of course he tells her no. But then the big question comes up, how she had information about the new Spider-Man she wanted to get published at the Bugle, except Jonah said no, which he tells Maria Hill why he said no. Because to one, respect Peter Parker, but also to protect the new Spider-Man. So jumping over to Miles' family, we see them having dinner and something is bothering Jefferson. Now Miles has no idea about his father being involved in stopping a group of Hydra agents. The way Miles learned is that when they are having dinner and trying to have a quiet night, we see that reporters have come to the home of Miles' family to get an interview with Jefferson. Of course, you have Jefferson being able to push the reporters out of his house, and then he decides that he needs to catch some air. So you have Jefferson leave, but that is when you have Genki appear for another reason. Now this is the same moment things get crazy, because when Jefferson went outside, his goal was to have a word with the reporters and ask them to leave him alone. Except that is the moment you have Venom appear ready to attack Jefferson here and now. Now, of course, Miles sees Venom outside getting ready to attack his father and hears Venom speak about Jefferson being the new Spider-Man. So Genki and Miles both know that Miles has to get out there and stop Venom before he ends up killing Jefferson on the spot. Also, the problem before Venom appeared, Miles' mother went outside to go talk to Jefferson before Venom had appeared. So now Miles has to protect both of his family members, which gives us a Venom versus Miles Morales battle we have been waiting for. This battle is going to be something new for Miles Morales, since Miles is still kind of a new hero in the world. So this will be his first time fighting a symbiote and trying to figure out how to defeat it. You have Brian Michael Bendis show us the inexperience of Miles Morales when it comes to being a new hero. Now this is going to lead to one of the toughest moments for Miles will have to go through, because at the end of this video, it is going to make Miles wish he was never Spider-Man ever again. But the fight does end with something big happening for this scene. Thanks to everything that has been going on, you have Miles' father Jefferson badly injured and in the arms of Miles' mother, which of course made Miles realize that he needs to hurry up and finish this battle, because if Miles does not wrap this battle up, well then Venom will kill him and his family. So this is Miles dealing with something that could affect the whole family, not just him. This battle does go across the city as a way to move Venom away from Jefferson, hoping that he finds a way to stop Venom. He does give Venom a Venom shock, which is hilarious to say, but it does work just good enough to make Venom leave into the sewers. Then the police arrive and Miles leaves in a hurry as well, so the battle is done for now. Of course, Miles comes back to see that his father is being put inside an ambulance and his mom ordering him to stay at home. This is Miles beginning to freak out that his father might die thanks to the idea of him being Spider-Man. So he is wondering what to do with being Spider-Man and also Venom still being out there, except things get a little bit more interesting. We did see Gwen Stacy going to some coffee shop to of course get some coffee, and that is when she runs into Mary Jane. Of course, Mary Jane has another part-time job and it is this coffee shop. You have the two of them kind of catching up because it has been a while since they had hung out, only to see the news about what had happened with Miles Morales. Both of them know they need to hurry up to help Miles out because of what Venom is. We then get a page to see Miles' parents had arrived at the hospital. Jefferson gets admitted quickly into the hospital. You have Miles' mother worrying about what is going to happen to her husband. Getting back to the scene of where the fight first took place, we see Maria Hill arrive at the scene, and of course makes sense because she is a cop. So you have her begin to investigate the scene of the crime. You have Genki and Miles freaking out and trying to figure out why in the world Venom came here for, because to Miles, Venom should not be here. Trying to figure out how Peter Parker was able to beat Venom the last time, except to Miles, he begins to think about him being Spider-Man. To him, he should not be Spider-Man if he is unable to stop Venom, wondering what he should do. But that is when he is greeted by Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane. They tell him they have a way to help Miles, so they all go inside the home of Miles, except they are seen by Maria Hill. We then see Venom reappear in the sewers because we knew that he was not that easily defeated. Except remember that Venom in this universe, well, he actually does eat people. So we see him come out of the sewers and actually begin the process of eating people. So now this is Venom putting a timer on Spider-Man to figure out a way to stop him. Getting back to Miles, Genki, Mary Jane, and Gwen Stacy, we see them talking about everything about Venom. I mean everything. How the Venom suit was created to be a cure for cancer, except of course it got turned into a weapon thanks to, well, we know Roxxon. Then explain how Carnage was made thanks to Kurt Connor and Ben Reilly that ended up killing Gwen Stacy, which she was brought back thanks to the whole Clone Saga storyline. Then she explained that Venom was built off Parker's DNA, so whoever has the Venom suit now is coming after Miles because he is Spider-Man, and Peter Parker was Spider-Man. They even show proof that Oscorp's old lab was blown up recently. Before they're able to continue their conversation, Maria Hill walks in. Now this is a very important moment because you have Maria Hill pointing out that Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane had connections to both Peter Parker and Venom. That is strange to see them here with Miles just days after she had visited Miles when the Prowler had died. Now this is Maria Hill actually trying to help Miles out, but of course Miles does not want anyone else to know that he is Spider-Man. Even though Maria Hill clearly knows that Miles is Spider-Man, so she is begging for him to let her help him before someone else gets hurt. Except that is the moment you have Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane being able to get Maria Hill to leave. But you can kind of see Maria Hill showing she cares for Miles when she leaves. Back at the hospital, you have Rio Morales, the mother of Miles Morales, waiting to get word on her husband. Right when she's about to get word that her husband has to battle through the injuries he had received, that is when people begin to scream that something is going on, which of course it is Venom here again looking for Jefferson because he thinks Jefferson is Spider-Man. So now Miles must head over here to save his parents. Now, the way Miles finds out about Venom being at the hospital, it is when Miles decides to confront Maria Hill outside his home about him not being Spider-Man, which of course she continues to say that she knows that he is Spider-Man, that he can't easily trick her like that. Except that is when you have a cop tell Maria Hill and Miles Morales that Venom is attacking the hospital once again. So you have Maria Hill give Miles Morales some advice, but then after she gave him that advice, you have Miles change into his Spider-Man outfit. But this is the moment Maria Hill confirms she was right, that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. Which we do skip back over to the hospital and we see that Venom is of course wreaking havoc in the hospital. Right now, no one can truly do anything except run for their lives. This even includes Rio Morales as well, as she has gone to hide in one of the closets in the hospital. Now, it doesn't take that long for Miles Morales to get there, so of course, we are about to get our good guy versus bad guy fight. So of course, this is Spider-Man giving his all to stop Venom, to save his mom and dad from Venom. Now earlier, when Maria Hill gave Miles advice, she told him not to fight the monster on his own. Since the whole time Venom has been around, Venom has been very difficult for Spider-Man to beat. She told him to save as many people as he can until help can come to help him take care of Venom. He ignores that advice and instead jumps into the battle, and of course, he is struggling. Now, while Venom is beating down on Miles, that is when Venom realized that Spider-Man is not Jefferson, but in reality some young boy. Then Rio Morales tries to shoot Venom with a gun because she knows that Spider-Man is Miles Morales. Now you have Venom begin to absorb Miles Morales, where it seems like Miles might die by the hands of Venom. Venom finally get what he wanted, except that is when you have Rio Morales beg Venom to let Miles go, to let her son go. When Venom hears that Miles Morales is her son, well, he then begins to absorb Rio Morales as well, making it seem like that now she's going to die by the hands of Venom at this moment. Except that is when you have Venom realize that something is wrong with him. Something is wrong inside of him. We found out that Miles Morales used his Venom shock just enough to separate Venom from his host, and we see that it is not Eddie Brock, but instead someone else. Before we find out, the police begin to spray bullets to kill off the host of Venom. We come to find out it was Dr. Marcus, who we saw back in the beginning of our video, who was talking to Betty Brant, the guy who used to work for Oscorp, except now he works for Roxxon instead. So that puts eyes on Roxxon now. But that part is minor at the moment. The reason why is because Miles finds out that one of the bullets the police shot actually hit Rio Morales as well. So of course, she was able to give Miles Morales some advice before she died in his arms, which was not tell his father about him being Spider-Man. Right when Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane, and Genki arrive at the hospital, they see Miles holding his mother in his arms. Then we jump over to Roxxon, the shady company that is always up to something sneaky. We pick up with Mr. Roxxon, where he tells his assistant to help the police out however they can, except he wants to know why Dr. Marcus had the Venom suit. How did he get access to the Venom suit? Then he states that he wants to figure out why in the world they were unable to make their own Spider-Man. Finally, to close on the final part of the story, we see Miles Morales thinking that everything is okay, thinking that his mom is okay, except when he wakes up, he realizes that he's over Genki's house, and that is when he remembers that his mother is dead. So he runs back in and begins to tear apart his Spider-Man outfit, stating that he is done being Spider-Man. And this is where we are going to end today's So with this book, we pick up 1 year after the ending of our last Ultimate Comics Spider-Man video. We know for sure that Miles Morales has retired from being Spider-Man. Also that he has a girlfriend now, and that would be Katie Bishop. Of course, this is the Ultimate Marvel Universe counterpart to Kate Bishop, who is Hawkeye in the main Marvel Universe. We see that Miles is still haunted by nightmares and memories of the death of his mother, which leads to him be distracted when he is around Katie Bishop and she is concerned. Except before she is able to get a reason why he has been distracted lately, Genki appears, who of course is the best friend of Miles Morales. Now Katie leaves because she can't deal with the fact that Genki is upset he could not get a limited edition Lego set. After she leaves though, that is when the conversation comes up that Miles should tell Katie that he used to be Spider-Man. Miles thinks it would be better for the relationship if she knows everything about him. Genki thinks it is a bad idea because it could put her in danger. Then that is when Jessica Drew calls up Miles Morales to talk to him and remind him that he forgot about their meeting. So Miles Morales leaves to go meet up with Jessica Drew. This meeting is more of Jessica Drew trying to convince Miles to put the Spider-Man outfit back on. She knows what has happened to his mother and that made him quit being a hero, except she thinks it is time for him to be a hero again. Hands him a suitcase hoping he will continue to be Spider-Man. He tells her no and leaves, which gives the chance to learn what the home life is like right now for Miles Morales. It is now just him and his father living together in this house, showing that they have moved on since the death of Miles' mother, but it is still hard to proceed forward with it. When Miles go to his room upstairs, Jessica Drew left him the suitcase again to keep pushing the idea of him being a hero. Now, of course, you have Miles say no to the idea and just put the suitcase back down. Now we do see Miles and his father Jefferson go out to eat to get a break from everything, but to also eat some food. Now at first, this seems like a normal night out for the guys, except that is when we see a surprise guest, and the guest will be Gwen Stacy. Remember, she knows that Miles was the new Spider-Man, and her and Aunt May gave Miles their blessing to be the new Spider-Man. Except she knows that Miles' mother was killed thanks to a cop who was trying to shoot Venom but ended up shooting his mother instead. So she knows why he quit being Spider-Man. So we see Gwen Stacy and Miles go to the back of the restaurant to have a conversation about him being Spider-Man. She knows that Miles is not doing okay thanks to the death of his mother. So she tries to reason with him and convince him to continue to be Spider-Man, stating the fact that her father died thanks to a Spider-Man thing. Of course, Miles Morales doesn't try to open up to Gwen Stacy, and he walks away from her. Miles goes back to his father, hoping to continue the idea of having a normal night out with his father. Except, of course, that is when his spider sense goes off, which then we see an explosion happen. Of course, everyone is wondering what had just happened. Also, the idea that this will be the first thing superhero or maybe supervillain related happened to Miles Morales in the last year. Come to find out that we see Bombshell being attacked by Ultimate Cloak and Dagger, giving us the first appearance of Cloak and Dagger in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. This, of course, leads us into learning the origin of both Cloak and Dagger. This will be broken up into multiple sections, but for the first section, it explains they met when Tandy was an angry customer that Ty Johnson was managing at. Now, both of these people are in high school, but it seems that they are seniors because the next page we learn they have became a couple and they were on their way to the prom until they were hit by a truck. Now, in the present day, we see that they are trying to capture Bombshell for some special reason. At the same time, we see Gwen Stacy trying to convince Miles to go sneak away and become Spider-Man to handle this problem. Of course, he tells her again that he is no longer Spider-Man. Now we see Cloak being able to capture Bombshell, and it seems that maybe he is trying to kill her because Dagger can tell that he is. The question is, why is Bombshell so important? But before Cloak is able to kill her, Bombshell breaks out by causing an explosion inside of Cloak. Then the story jumps back to 3 months ago to learn more of what happened to Cloak and Dagger after the car accident. When we find out they both ended up in a coma. Their parents were going to go ahead and pull the plug and let them die since they were in a coma. Except we see that Roxxon Brain Trust decided to take them instead. The Roxxon Brain Trust is a group of smart people that worked for Roxxon, and they are trying to complete certain projects. Back in the present day, we see the fight does continue between Cloak and Dagger versus Bombshell. This is also the moment when you have Gwen Stacy try one more time to convince Miles Morales to be Spider-Man. He reminds her again that he will not be Spider-Man because of what had happened with his mother. So Gwen Stacy slaps him because to her, he is being a wimp, a coward, scared to be something he should be because of his powers. At the same time, we see that Cloak and Dagger were able to grab Bombshell and leave. Jumping back into the past, we pick up 3 days ago where we see Roxxon Brain Trust begin to experiment on Cloak and Dagger. Remember that Roxxon's goal after Venom was to recreate what Norman Osborn did, which of course make him a new Spider-Man. Instead, you had the Brain Trust say that they thought of giving him something better than Spider-Man, stating that there is energy or dark matter in people. Once it is unlocked, it can unlock hidden potential. Of course, we see once they did that, they unlocked the powers of Cloak and Dagger. In the present day, we see Miles Morales sitting on his bed thinking about how he tried to stay away from the superhero life, only for it to come back in his life again. He does not want any part of it. The next day, we see Gwen Stacy talk to Aunt May about her running into Miles Morales, explains how she's upset that Miles Morales is no longer Spider-Man. You have Aunt May take a step back after hearing that. She goes on to say that sometimes you can't force someone to be Spider-Man, that sometimes you have to let them make their own decision to help them grow. Getting back to Miles Morales, we see him meeting up with Katie Bishop. They are, of course, having a couple moment, except Katie can tell that something is bothering Miles Morales. She thinks it has to do something with Genki, since Genki is also acting weird. Now, she is somewhat correct, but at the same time, she is still wrong. She thinks it is because Genki has a crush on Miles Morales. Except there is a deeper reason why Genki is upset with Miles. We do learn the reason why Genki is upset because Gwen Stacy had texted Genki and told him how Miles Morales was near the scene of the incident involving Cloak and Dagger and did not do anything at all. So to Genki, a year off is far too long. It is time for him to be Spider-Man. Except again, Miles does not want to be Spider-Man or even try to work his way up to that level. It is an automatic no. We jump back into the past where we see the moment after Cloak and Dagger had received their powers, where we then see Samuel Stern try to capture them by turning into his Hulk form. Remember that he is one of the members of the Roxxon Brain Trust, but also he can turn into a Hulk. Not as strong as some of the others we have seen like Bruce Banner and Tyrone Cash, but still a strong Hulk. This fight does end with Cloak and Dagger being able to escape before losing to him. This, of course, leads into the big moment of this book. It is when Miles Morales gets home and sees that Jessica Drew is there, where you have Jessica Drew say it is time for them to have the big talk. Remember, back to the ultimate Divided We Fall, United We Stand event, Spider-Woman told Miles that there is going to be a moment where she is going to tell him what is wrong with her. The reason why she wants Miles to be Spider-Man is because of the idea of Norman Osborn, how he basically made Spider-Man, Peter Parker, just by a mistake. But he was so tempted to recreate another Spider-Man, it led to Miles Morales being made. But let's not forget how Dr. Octopus made clones of Peter Parker, which gives the Spider-Woman in this universe. The point she is trying to say here is that Miles needs to be Spider-Man because there will be scientists out there who will keep doing things men should not be doing, and they don't care who they hurt. That leads into Miles realizing it is time for him to be Spider-Man again and goes to join Spider-Woman to track down Roxxon and Bombshell and Cloak and Dagger. Now we finally learn about the origin of Bombshell, starting off with her mother. We jump back in the past where we see Lana Baumgartner? I think it's Baumgartner. Could be wrong. The mother of Bombshell, who is getting a deal with Roxxon. That Roxxon is going to get her out of jail, but of course, this is them trying to use her as a way to test on her. Back in the present day, we see Miles and Jessica Drew as Spider-Man and Spider-Woman finding Bombshell. Now, I don't think they show how she escaped from Cloak and Dagger, but we do see her trying to run away from Spider-Man and Spider-Woman. This is not them trying to capture or maybe make her turn herself in. It is more of them saying that they need her help. They are both here to actually help her out, and we are going to learn why very soon. Of course, we do get a splash page to show us that back in the past, of course, Roxxon got Lana out of prison to, of course, begin the process of testing on her, of course, to give her powers. we get another splash page where we see why Cloak and Dagger is after Bombshell for. The reason why is because they stole a list with everyone who gained powers from Roxxon. Of course, Bombshell is on that list because of her mother, since her mother Lana was tested on by Roxxon. They think because her name is on the list that she may have some connection to what happened to them. Maybe she had a hand in their creation. Now, of course, we get to see Roxxon himself getting upset at his brain trust not being able to capture Cloak and Dagger. That now even Bombshell is involved in this madness. So the big question is now, what are they going to do to capture Cloak, Dagger, and Bombshell? Of course, Roxxon tells them that he has already begun the process of a new plan to bring them in. We get our first introduction to Ultimate Taskmaster in this universe, being hired to hunt them down. So of course, we jump into the past. We see how Roxxon began to do many tests on Lana, where they began to celebrate once her powers began to show. Now, this is also telling us that she was the first person they had tested on. Once they have completed the test, we see them celebrate their accomplishment. Except that is the moment they find out that Lana is pregnant. They find this out after they had completed the test and her gaining powers. Since they left the speaker on when they had found out, of course, she now knows about her baby. So she uses her powers to escape and leave to protect her baby. In the present day, we see Spider-Man and Spider-Woman talking to Bombshell about why she's being chased down by Cloak and Dagger. Except before she is able to answer that, well, out of nowhere, they are attacked by Taskmaster, who begins the process of kicking their butt. Now, Cloak and Dagger are wondering what they should do when it comes to Roxxon because they are planning to kidnap Roxxon. They are trying to get answers on why they were chosen to be kidnapped and tested on. Except that is the moment when they see an explosion going on and wondering if they should go over to the explosion and see what is going on. Back with Miles Morales, Spider-Woman, and Bombshell, we see them fighting against Taskmaster. Now, this is the moment we learn that Taskmaster actually has abilities, and those abilities are based around the idea that he can absorb people's powers and throw them back at them. Meaning that people who have super strength and so on, he can absorb their powers. So where we see our heroes fighting against this man, hoping that they can find a way to stop him, of course, they are struggling on finding a way to stop Taskmaster. That is until they are joined by Cloak and Dagger, who, of course, are able to stop Taskmaster. Master. Well, really, it is Cloak who stops him by grabbing Taskmaster and absorbing him into his cape until there is a point that Taskmaster is no longer able to fight against Cloak. That is when they find out they all want to take Roxxon down. That Cloak, Dagger, and Bombshell all have a score to settle when it comes to Roxxon and his company. You have Spider-Man and Spider-Woman down as well because of how evil Roxxon truly is. Now, the opening of this book, we pick up at Roxxon, where we see Roxxon talking to some of his employees about the Cloak, Dagger, and Bombshell situation, where they tell him that the heroes are on their way, which of course the heroes do appear through the window. Now, this is a big moment of the book, because you have Roxxon insulting the death of Miles Morales' mother, how he is blaming Miles Morales for him failing to save his own mother. Of course, you have Miles Morales show how angry he is for what Roxxon had just said. Now, Roxxon thinks that he is untouchable because he had a deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. But of course, you have Spider-Woman tell him that she does not care, that she is going to bring him in. Of course, this begins a little battle between everyone in the room. But the most important part, since Roxxon was insulting the death of Miles Morales' mother, you have Miles shoot a web and tell everyone that he is going to have a conversation with Roxxon outside of the building, letting the rest of the heroes stay inside to deal with other things while he deals with Roxxon outside of the building. Now, Roxxon explains to us in Miles Morales how he knows that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. He tells us that he was the one who hired Miles Morales' uncle, Aaron Davis, to break into Oscorp, hoping to find a way to recreate another Spider-Man. Of course, that did happen, but once it had happened, Roxxon was able to dig deep enough to learn that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. Now, Roxxon does mention that Miles should ask his father about the good old days. The question is, what does that even mean? Back inside the building, you have the rest of the heroes getting ready to fight against the Brain Trust. Now, some of them have powers like Dr. Stern and Mr. Sinister. Layla Miller does not. With this fight going on, it does last for a few pages, but it doesn't last that long once Miles Morales rejoins the battle to help the other heroes take down the Roxxon Brain Trust. Once everyone has been taken down, you have S.H.I.E.L.D. agents appear and Spider-Woman giving them an update on what had happened. So you have all of the heroes just leave. The book closes on the idea of Miles Morales going back home to his dorm room, where Genki is there to greet him. And this is the moment you have Miles Morales announce that he is Spider-Man once again. So we have the return of Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And this is where we are going to end today's video. So please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read? Well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoyed today's video. With the opening of this book, this is where we pick up with Miles Morales and Genki. Of course, Miles Morales is the latest Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, who took up the mantle of Spider-Man after Peter Parker had died. Genki was the best friend of Miles Morales and had also helped Miles in different ways. We see that the two of them are going over to Parker's home for something. We don't know yet why they are, but we also learn that Genki is planning to give Gwen Stacy some Lego thing to hopefully impress her and hoping to get her number. The next section focuses on Mary Jane, who's about to walk into the home of the Parkers with her new boyfriend Liam, which honestly, this is great news for her to see her moving on from Peter Parker to a new guy. Except when they get there, whatever this big event that is about to happen at this house, she feels bad bringing her new boyfriend to her old boyfriend's house. She asks Liam to leave, and he honestly understands and leaves, which leads to her walking into the house of the Parkers. Next page, we open up with Lana Aka Bombshell, who was originally a villain of Peter Parker, but at the end of his time being Spider-Man and with Miles Morales becoming Spider-Man, she actually turned good and became a hero somewhat. But we see her with Jessica Drew, who was known as Spider-Woman, who is actually changing her name. We see them both going to the home of the Parkers. After that, we pick up with the Human Torch and Iceman, who were both close friends of Peter Parker at the tail end of his time as Spider-Man, except they both run into Liz Allen, who in this universe is known as Firestar, who is just basically a female Human Torch. She was a close friend of Mary Jane, but she knew Peter Parker as well. But all three of them are going to the home of the Parkers as well. We learned that the reason why everyone is coming to the home of the Parker is because it's the 2nd anniversary of the death of Peter Parker. Remember, he was killed by the Green Goblin and the Sinister Six. So it is just everyone just coming together again. The people Peter Parker was close to are helped along the way. Also, there is a point where Genki does give Gwen Stacy his Lego set he made as a gift. She likes it and gives him a kiss. Don't worry, this won't last long in this universe. Then out of nowhere, you have Tony Stark send a catering service to help out everything. Honestly, Tony and the last few members of the Ultimates still feel bad for the death of Peter Parker, so it is his way to say, I'm sorry and helping out. Now, you do have Kitty Pryde appear, and remember that her and Peter Parker dated for a brief moment, so it makes sense for her to come here. Everyone is happy, and we get reminded that she defeated Galactus and how the mutant race is loved. We also see the return of Kong, who has been gone for so long now, so it is nice to see him here. There is a moment where you have a limo just driving by, and inside of it is J. Jonah Jameson, who basically wants to go in, but it is too hard for him to do it. He truly cared for Peter Parker and cared for Spider-Man at the end. Now, after everyone has walked in or even drove by, you have everyone begin to think and wonder, what would Peter Parker be like if he was still alive? To Mary Jane, she remembers that Nick Fury said he was training Peter and thought that Peter had what it takes to be the best hero he can be, possibly even end up leading the Ultimates. Aunt May thought he would take his love for science to make the city and the police force better, making different kinds of gadgets to be used. What seems to be like a Spider-Man police force. They all get the chance to wear different kinds of police armor and use it to protect the city. That he would have done great things for the world thanks to his love for science. For Gwen Stacy, it's more of she thought of Peter Parker becoming some kind of reporter for the Daily Bugle, using his Spider-Man skills to put away the bad guys that just don't stay locked up. So people like the Kingpin, even though the Kingpin is dead now thanks to Ultimate Mysterio. Just him using his spider powers, but his abilities as a reporter too, since he thought that Spider-Man was just not enough for him to put people away. For Miles, he never met Peter Parker. Remember that Miles Morales got his powers before Peter Parker had died. The only thing was that Miles Morales was scared of his powers and basically just never used them until after Peter died. He just thinks about how cool it would be if him and Peter Parker had actually worked together as a dynamic duo of spider heroes in this universe. Kitty Pryde, well, let me just say she still has feelings for Peter Parker, even though in the Ultimate X-Men books she moved on to Jimmy, the son of Wolverine, for a brief moment. We see that she was hoping that one day her and Peter Parker would end up married. They would still fight crime, just they would be married too, showing no matter what, she still loved Peter Parker. The last person to talk about what Peter Parker would be like is Bobby Drake. He was thinking if Peter was alive, there would be some kind of mini Ultimates team and S.H.I.E.L.D. would give them tech to fight crime. Nothing too serious or crazy to really get into. Now, to close on the book, you have Aunt May thinking that it would be a great idea for her and the others to give the catering service food out to the homeless to be nice. Also, that it is something that Peter Parker would do. Then you have everyone heading home for the day and saying goodbye, except to build up for the next Ultimate Spider-Man series, and the last one to be more exact. We see someone was watching the home of the Parkers this whole time. Who? Well, we're going to find out in the next Ultimate Spider-Man book. But this is the end. So with the opening of this book, we get one of the biggest reveals of this book, that Norman Osborn did not die at the end of Ultimate Spider-Man Death of Spider-Man storyline, like we all thought he did when that book happened. But we see that Nick Fury kept the fact that Norman Osborn is alive, except with the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer around thanks to the ending of Ultimate Catalysm, where the American government thinks S.H.I.E.L.D. has not done a good job protecting the Earth. Now the American government now has to watch over Norman Osborn, which we all know how this is going to go later on. Going over to Brooklyn, we do get this scene where you have Brian Michael Bendis introduce some new villains. These villains are going to pop up here and there again, but their goal is of course to steal some things. Except with them looking like Spider-Man in some areas of their bodies, this is going to lead to people thinking that people are going around pretending to be Spider-Man. These characters are going to appear again throughout this video and the next one too. Finally getting over to the star of the book, Miles Morales, we see him hanging out with his new girlfriend, Kate Bishop. Now of course, she has no idea that he is Spider-Man and how he is part of the all-new Ultimates as well. So she is wondering where he was the night before this moment because they had some plans. But Miles can't tell Kate that he was out being Spider-Man. Then she brings up the fact that maybe he missed hanging out with her because his dad finally came home. So let me explain, because we skipped this part in the Ultimate Catalysm event. In the tie-ins for Spider-Man for that event, Miles' father found out that Miles Morales is Spider-Man and blames Miles for the death for Miles' mother, who died by the hands of Venom. Since Miles' father, Jefferson, found out, he never had returned home yet, thanks to him finding out about his son being Spider-Man. We then switch over to the idea of Norman Osborn, who is being transported to his new holding cell, because again, S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer around. Even though I feel like they could keep him in the same cell he has been in, either way, Green Goblin breaks out and now he is on the loose once again in the world. Of course, we all saw this coming earlier. Getting back to Miles, we see him talking to Genki, and this is him talking to Genki about maybe Miles telling Kate Bishop that he is Spider-Man, which of course to Genki, that would be a bad idea. But Miles hates lying about where he has been to Kate. Even though Genki expressed how he feels about this, Miles thinks he needs to go to an expert about this topic. Of course, the person he goes to is Mary Jane, because she was the girlfriend to the Ultimate Spider-Man Peter Parker. Miles wants to know if it is a good idea for him to tell Kate by comparing it to Peter Parker telling Mary Jane. She tells him it has its ups and downs, like almost being killed multiple times by Spider-Man's villains, but she is happy he did, because if he had died before telling her, that would hit her feelings even more. So it is her telling Miles, just make sure if you are going to tell Kate, make sure it is the right choice. To close on the first chapter, you have Miles Morales swinging home, where of course he passes a billboard that is talking about the two new villains from earlier. Makes him wonder what is going on with that, except he does go home hoping that maybe his father has finally come home. He hears noises coming from his bedroom, which makes him wonder if his father has finally returned home after being gone for so long. This of course gives us our big plot twist of the book in the Ultimate Spider-Man universe. The person in his room is no other than Peter Parker. who should be dead in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Of course, we can't dive into that moment because we have to focus on the fact that Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, is back on the loose, where we see him right now visiting his old Oscorp building. Of course, it is run down, so it seems that there is not much left there. Except, of course, that is when we see that he had a hidden lab that is holding a bunch of different Oz formulas, money, and anything else he would need to continue his work. We can finally switch back to Miles Morales, who has a supposed to be dead Peter Parker in his room, where you have Miles freaking out because there is no way Peter Parker should be alive at the moment. He should be dead. And you have Miles actually speak about the idea that Peter Parker should be dead now. How in the world is this man alive again? And you have Miles Morales think that maybe this Peter Parker is from another dimension or another Earth, like how he met the main Marvel Universe Peter Parker. Of course, we know it is not, but you have this Peter Parker demand that Miles Morales should hand over Peter Parker's web shooters. Remember that Aunt May gave Miles Morales Peter Parker's web shooters as a way to honor Peter Parker and complete the process of Miles Morales being Spider-Man. Except Peter Parker is demanding that Miles Morales hands back over the web shooters. Miles thinks Peter should tell his Aunt May that he is alive, except this Peter Parker thinks it is a bad idea, and they actually fight for a moment, where it ends with Miles getting knocked out, but once he wakes up, Peter Parker is now gone. Now, once Miles Morales wakes up, he quickly thinks that there is no way Peter Parker is alive again, or that this is some Peter Parker from another universe. This is clearly a clone of Peter Parker. Just like in the main Marvel Universe, in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, there was a clone saga. And of course, Miles met one of those clones. Spider-Woman from this universe, Jessica Drew, is a clone of Peter Parker. So Miles thinks that this new random Peter Parker must be a clone of the original Spider-Man. You have Brian Michael Bendis remind us about the two new villains who people think are related to Spider-Man. Once again, we see them stealing more stuff, but this time they're stealing things from a Stark place. Except this time we get to actually know what they are trying to steal, which is of course a project named Latveria. It is the only thing they really want. This is the moment you have Miles Morales run over to Genki and tell Genki what just happened. You also have Miles Morales telling Genki that he thinks it has to be a clone that is running around. Genki and Miles are really trying to figure out if this could be true. But also, this is the moment you have Kate Bishop appear again, the girlfriend of Miles Morales. This seems like this is going to be the moment you have Miles Morales going to tell Kate Bishop that he is Spider-Man, because when she walks up on Genki and Miles, the two of them quickly try to change the subject, and she knows that they are hiding something. So it is going to be the moment Miles is going to tell Kate Bishop who he is. Sadly, we have to switch over to J. Jonah Jameson, who is going to have some more big moments in this book. Also, that this is the moment the public finds out that Norman Osborn is alive, since Jonah was trying to tell his staff to give him something good to publish, and you have Ben Urich walk in and announce that Norman Osborn is alive again. Picking up with Maria Hill, who in this universe, she is a detective, we learn that the Spider-Man who attacked the Stark base earlier had the police looking into this case, of course, except with one of the guards dying in the hospital from his injuries, the case became a homicide case and was given over to Maria Hill, where now the question is there a connection between those Spider-like characters to Miles Morales? Because remember, she knows that Miles Morales is Spider-Man, so she is going to question Miles Morales. Finally, getting back to Miles Morales, Genki, Kate Bishop, well, you do have Miles Morales tell Kate Bishop that he is Spider-Man. Of course, at first, she does not believe that he is Spider-Man. Once you have the two guys both going quiet for a while and give a look that Miles is serious, well, you have Kate Bishop realize that Miles Morales was telling the truth, and she runs away. After Miles Morales tells Kate Bishop who he is, well, that is when you have Maria Hill pull up to tell Miles Morales that he needs to get in the car. That yes, he is in trouble, but it is because he put on that suit. Of course, Miles is young, and when you have a friend like Genki, Genki tells Miles to run, and Miles does, and uses his powers to disappear. Of course, that makes Maria Hill mad, but she drives off. Now, Miles Morales uses his powers to just disappear, and once Maria Hill leaves, well, he reappears again, and this is the moment he finds out that Norman Osborn is alive. That could be another reason why Maria Hill has shown up again. That leads us back to Norman Osborn, but also a sad moment, as we get another death of a longtime character in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. This person who is going to die is Monica Chang. Monica Chang, of course, was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. after Nick Fury and Carol Danvers left the role. She was the last one. Of course, her leadership led up to the moment S.H.I.E.L.D. was closed down. Also, she is the ex-wife and the mother to Nick Fury's child. But we see that she has brought a team of agents all working for the American government to bring in Norman Osborn, except they are nowhere prepared to have the gear to handle him. So you have Norman Osborn killing all the agents, including Monica Chang as well. So where Miles Morales goes next is the home of the Parkers, since Norman Osborn is alive, and also the fact that there is a Peter Parker running around out there in the city. He thinks that maybe one or both of them could go there, the home of Aunt May and Gwen Stacy, except when he gets there, of course, they are not home. So he feels lucky about that. Sadly, this is the moment you have Miles Morales meet Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin. The new Spider-Man gets the chance to fight against the old Spider-Man's worst enemy. Getting back to Kate Bishop, because she just found out that her boyfriend is Spider-Man, when she comes home crying and running up to her room, well, her sister Misha saw her, wondering what is going on. And you have Kate Bishop tell her sister that Miles Morales told her that he is Spider-Man. Now, Misha quickly tells her sister, Kate Bishop, that she cannot tell mom and dad. If she does, well, they will kill Miles Morales. We also learn that Kate Bishop actually loves Miles Morales and understands why he told her that he is Spider-Man. Getting back to Miles Morales, who's about to fight against the Green Goblin, this is the biggest moment really for Miles Morales. Now he has to fight against the worst enemy of Peter Parker. This is going to be a new learning experience for Miles Morales, which at first shows that he can't just rely on his basic moves. He is going to have to adapt and learn that Norman Osborn is not someone you can take so lightly. You need to take a man like this very seriously. So of course, Miles Morales knows what is at stake here for sure. So of course, with this fight happening in the middle of a random neighborhood, the news is getting out quick and everyone finds out that Norman Osborn and the new Spider-Man are fighting against each other. We also learn that Miles Morales went to the wrong home of the Parkers, the old one, since Aunt May and Gwen Stacy are also finding out about this fight. I mean, even Mary Jane, Jonah, Maria Hill, Genki, Ben Urich, and even Kate Bishop. This is huge for everyone because everyone thought Norman Osborn was dead, not alive, except here he is again. Then to make things worse, you have the clone of Peter Parker or whatever he is appearing out of nowhere. Since this is being shown all over the news, all of the characters from Peter Parker's life and Miles Morales' life now know there is someone else who could be Peter Parker running around in the old suit. For Green Goblin, He is confused on how Peter Parker is alive again, so this makes him angry. Except you have the two Spider-Man work together to stop the Green Goblin because they know how dangerous he is. This fight ends with Green Goblin running away after taking a few punches from the two Spider-Men and a Venom blast from Miles Morales. For the last page for this chapter, well, you have the news show Miles Morales and Peter Parker. Of course, Aunt May and Gwen Stacy are seeing this, and Gwen doesn't want to believe that it is Peter Parker. For Aunt May, it could be Peter Parker, her nephew. So with the opening of the 5th chapter and the last one for this video, this is the moment you have the police surrounding both of the Spider-Men, where the police are planning on arresting the two of them. Of course, you have Peter Parker tell Miles Morales to run, even though Peter Parker took back the web shooters that Miles Morales had. So while Peter Parker is able to swing away by his web shooters, Miles has to run and end up getting shot in the leg. Well, grazed by the bullet. So Miles is able to get away, but he is not able to get too far because of the bullet graze that he got. So he really can't go far thanks to the bullet graze. And also he has no web shooters. Lucky for him, Maria Hill decides to risk her job and let Miles Morales get in the car so she can take him somewhere so she can find some kind of help for him. So he does have somebody on his side as it seems. Switching over to our new villains, we get to see them out of their costumes, and we see it is two dudes who are twin brothers. Well, they seem like twins to me in this section, but we don't learn much about them, except they are working for someone. One brother is thinking about stopping all of this, the other one doesn't. They both are scared of their boss, but they're going to use the time where the police are looking for the Spider-Men to steal more things. Which then leads us back to Miles Morales and Maria Hill as they pull over and she gives him a first aid kit to help bandage him up. Miles Morales calls Genki to let him know that he is okay, except this is the moment you have Maria Hill wanting to know more about the other Spider-Man, but also how in the world is the Green Goblin alive again? Someone who should still be dead, but of course he is not. The next section is more of us seeing where Norman Osborn went after fighting against both other Spider-Men. Well, he went to go see J. Jonah Jameson. So now the big question is, why in the world is J. Jonah Jameson so important for Norman Osborn to come over here for? Well, we learned that Norman Osborn wants the world to know his pain, but also how thanks to all of the different organizations that forced him to make the Oz formula, S.H.I.E.L.D., Roxxon, and Hydra too, they all had a hand into him working to create the Oz formula that made him look bad, made him look like a monster. Even after he made Peter Parker Spider-Man and him, they made him look like a monster to the world. Except of course we know the truth. So his goal is to get payback to all of those people who are in power. Before he is able to explain even more, well, you have Jonah shoot at Norman Osborn. We don't get to see the outcome of that. So that is one of our cliffhangers for this video. The second cliffhanger is that Maria Hill and Miles Morales knows where Peter Parker is at. So we see them drive over to the home of Mary Jane. And of course, there is Peter Parker with Mary Jane. Then Peter Parker thinks it is time for Miles Morales to finally get some answers on what is going on here. And this is where we are going to end today's video. So please, so with the opening of our next video, it picks up where one of our cliffhangers left off at. We saw J. Jonah Jameson shoot Norman Osborn, who has showed up talking about how Norman Osborn was going to go after the people who have affected his life so much. Now to Jonah, he thinks that he has killed Norman Osborn and everything is finally over now. Except we see that he has some kind of healing factor, that he's basically borderline immortal, that he cannot die, that thanks to the Oz formula, he cannot die now. And this is the moment we see the death of J. Jonah Jameson, which honestly kind of sucks. So getting back to the cliffhanger where we picked up with Miles Morales and Maria Hill, who have found the newly returned from the dead Peter Parker at the home of Mary Jane, where Peter Parker said at the ending of our last video that he was going to give Miles Morales answers, and you have Mary Jane actually believe that this is the real Peter Parker. It is not some clone. Except for Miles Morales, he keeps preaching that there is no way that Peter Parker should be alive again. No matter how many great things had happened in this universe, Peter tries to say that he is not going to talk because Maria Hill is there, but Miles Morales says she is okay and then asks Peter Parker what he remembers, which of course everything that led up to the point of his death. He then mentions that he woke up in Atlanta like everything is okay now, that the last thing he remembered was his death. So when he woke up in Atlanta, of course, he made his way towards New York, where the first person he found was Mary Jane, but he has been hiding out there this whole time. He even talked about how he went to go check his grave and his grave was empty. So he was confused that some mad scientist took him and tried to play genetics with his body, and that woke him up. That he's beginning to think that maybe him and Norman Osborn could both be immortal. So that leaves Miles Morales wondering why Peter Parker hasn't told Aunt May and Gwen Stacy that he is alive. Except, of course, you have Aunt May and Gwen Stacy show up because she knew that her nephew would be hiding here with Mary Jane. This is a heartbreaking moment because her nephew, who she had held in her arms when he died, is once again living in the world, leaving her wondering how the world is this even possible. Except this moment is short-lived because you have Norman Osborn returned once again, so that means it is time for another round of fighting. This is the big moment of the book, because this is where you have Miles Morales be the one to fight against the Green Goblin, while you have Peter Parker just really sit there and watch this fight. Now, Brian Michael Bendis is stating that Peter Parker is watching over Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, and Aunt May, except in reality, it is Peter Parker watching the Spider-Man that came after him actually be able to go toe-to-toe with the Green Goblin. Now that it seems that everything is over, this is the moment you have Norman Osborn speak about how he knows everything about Miles Morales, knows the secret about his father, and where his powers really come from. Now, it is not like Norman Osborn speaking in a way where he is stating that he had a hand in the process of Miles Morales getting spider powers. It is not him stating that Miles fathered him go way back. It is more of Norman Osborn saying that once he found out that Miles Morales, a new Spider-Man, being out there in the world, he studied everything he could about Miles Morales and Miles Morales' family, to the point he knows the big family secret. This was Norman Osborn kind of buying time so he would be able to complete the process of charging back up and turning back into his Green Goblin form. This leads into the Spider-Men having to work together once again just to fight against Norman Osborn, who is fully charged into his Green Goblin form. Now, there is something I do want to point out. It is the fact that Miles Morales' Venom shock really messes up Green Goblin. When Miles Morales decides to use it, it affects Norman Osborn more than other villains that both of the Spider-Men have fought over time. It actually causes him to slow down or even scare him to run away. And the big question is, why? Once the fighting is over, you have Norman Osborn turn back into his regular human form. Of course, he is someone who can't take a defeat so well, so he begins the process of charging back up so he can fight the two Spider-Men again. It states that he's going to reveal everything, except once he tries to power up once more, well, he has some kind of stroke or something and dies right there, which confuses everyone. But you have both of the Spider-Men ordered to leave Maria Hill before the cops come. She also tells them to take Aunt May, Gwen Stacy, and Mary Jane with them as well. Once they do leave, you do have Maria Hill actually begin the process of burning the body of Norman Osborn. It is her kind of hoping that this will be the one thing to actually kill him off. And so you have Miles Morales and Peter Parker take all of the ladies to a nearby warehouse, and when they get there, this is the moment you have Peter Parker kind of passing off the torch of Spider-Man over to Miles Morales. After watching Miles Morales fight, Peter Parker believes that Miles Morales can be a great Spider-Man. Also, Mary Jane and Peter Parker are going to find out who brought Peter Parker and Norman Osborn back to life, who's going around pulling the strings to everything. Either way, you have Miles Morales leave the warehouse. This is also the moment we learn what is going on with Kate Bishop Paris. Remember that Kate Bishop's sister told her not to tell their parents that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. Well, the reason why is because her parents are Hydra agents, which is the big plot twist of this book. We did see Peter Parker and Mary Jane get in their car. Well, Mary Jane's mom's car, to be more exact. Again, this is them leaving to find out who is pulling all of the strings in this mess. Getting back to Miles Morales, we find out that basically Miles' father has returned back home. And well, Miles' father is ready to explain the origin of the family. Well, him and his brother, Jefferson. So we pick up in Newmark, but we pick up 25 years ago in the past, where we pick up with a young Jefferson, the father of Miles Morales, except Jefferson is with his brother who was named Aaron. Of course, Aaron was the uncle of Miles Morales, also known as the Prowler in this universe, who died early on in Miles Morales' Spider-Man life. Now remember, Jefferson told Miles a while back that he and Aaron used to do some dirty stuff. Well, with this opening of this book, we see the meeting with Turk Barrett, somebody who is a gang leader in this universe, or was at this time in this universe. Either way, Aaron came here to get something he was owed by Turk, but Turk tells Aaron and Jefferson that they can get what they want, but they need to go on a drive first. Except when they get to the place, it leads into Jefferson arriving at a place. But Aaron is gone, and so is Turk. It is just Jefferson and all of Turk's men, which you should know what's about to happen next. Which of course leads into Turk's men just ending up jumping Jefferson. Now you may think this will lead into Jefferson getting his butt kicked by these guys. Well, actually no. Jefferson is able to beat all of these guys down and gives him the chance to run away. Sadly though, he doesn't get too far because the police arrive. Jefferson is arrested. Luckily for Jefferson, he was able to show that he could beat up all of Turk's men. So time has passed by, and we pick up with Jefferson getting out of jail. Someone paid for his bail, and that person of course is Nick Fury. He was the one who paid the bail, but there's a reason why Nick Fury wants to hire Jefferson to be a SHIELD agent and work undercover in Turk's business. The reason why is because since Jefferson was able to beat all of Turk's men, Turk is going to hire Jefferson to work for him, be his #1 bodyguard. If Jefferson says no, Turk will kill him. So Jefferson has to say yes. So why not be a SHIELD agent working undercover? So basically Jefferson has no choice when it comes to this. So of course some more time does pass by, and Jefferson is picked up by Turk's men, who takes Jefferson to meet Turk. Except when he gets there, well, Aaron is there too, his old brother who left him behind when Turk's men were beating Jefferson up. And you have Turk hire Jefferson to be his #1 bodyguard, just like Nick Fury knew what would happen. Now Aaron and Jefferson are not going to work together because Turk has Aaron working on something different. Jefferson knows he has no choice but to agree to work for Turk. You have Nick Fury meet up with Jefferson to talk about why it is so important for Jefferson to work for Turk. The reason why is because while Turk and his army of gangsters lead into them doing some messed up things across the city, it is going to give Turk and Jefferson the chance to meet one important person we have not seen in a very long time. And remember, this is all taking place in the past. The person Nick Fury is talking about is the Kingpin. That the Kingpin could be in the making of buying Turk's operations and making Turk leave. Meaning could end up with Jefferson working for Wilson Fisk and hopefully learn what Wilson Fisk is planning, because Nick Fury says that back then Wilson Fisk was doing something that was breaking a lot of international laws. So he continues to talk more about his time working for the Kingpin, that we are now focusing on a time where Jefferson is now working for the Kingpin. Again, this is only Jefferson who is working for the Kingpin. This is not Jefferson and Aaron who is working for the Kingpin, just Jefferson. But also, this is the moment we learn that Jefferson was part of the Enforcers. We have seen the Enforcers before in our readings for the Ultimate Marvel Universe. You have Ox, Fancy Dan, and Montana. There were a bunch of guys who didn't have any specific powers, but they were sent out by the Kingpin to take on specific tasks that the Kingpin needed to be done. And you have Jefferson go meet up with young Nick Fury, who again is making Jefferson be undercover under Kingpin's operations. Except Jefferson wants out. He is tired of dealing with the Kingpin and all of the crimes he has to commit while being undercover. Sadly, Nick Fury tells Jefferson that he cannot quit because there is something big that is going to happen under Kingpin's control. Sadly, Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. have no idea about what the Kingpin is planning. So the question is still popping up, what is the Kingpin about to do? Well, we find out when Kingpin is meeting up with Toad. Yes, Toad, who used to work for Magneto, also was an X-Men too, but he is a mutant who has Toad-like abilities, and he is meeting up with Kingpin to make a deal, which we come to find out that Toad is giving Kingpin MGH. Of course, MGH is known as mutant growth hormones, which is a drug that gives regular people mutant-like powers while also giving mutants a little boost in their powers as well. This deal is about to be complete, except that is when you have Toad reveal how to make these pills. You have to use mutant DNA, and that is when he reveals a mutant that can be used to make the pills. For Jefferson, this is going too far. They are talking about trading someone like property. So this leads into Jefferson trying to fight against Toad. And honestly, it is not a fair fight since Jefferson never had to fight a mutant. Someone who, of course, has powers that gives them the edge. Now you have Kingpin jump in and help Jefferson deal with Toad, but that is not the big moment of the book. The big moment of this book is when you have Nick Fury step in and stop everyone and reveal that this is what Nick Fury was watching the Kingpin over. This is what has S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury wondering what was going on with the Kingpin. And so you have Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. arrest Kingpin, and Jefferson leaves S.H.I.E.L.D. So to close on this book, we see Jefferson explain that after all of that, Jefferson gave up working for S.H.I.E.L.D. That is when, of course, he met Miles' mother, and also later on, Miles was born. This leads into Jefferson talking about how he wasn't really upset that Miles Morales was Spider-Man. He was still dealing with the fact the death of Miles' mother and also Jefferson's brother's death as well. So, with Miles coming out only a year after the death of those two people, well, of course, it is Jefferson's mind just hitting the breaking point. But he didn't realize how much of a jerk he was, leaving his son behind to live by himself when his son needed him the most. And this is where we are In the opening of this book, we pick up with Maria Hill and what seems to be a SWAT team about to raid into a home. The reason why is because they are looking for those Spider-Man twins that were running around in our last few Ultimate Spider-Man videos. She got word that maybe they are hiding here in this apartment. So you have Maria Hill and her team of SWAT rush into the apartment hoping to get them, only to find out that the apartment is actually empty, which of course sucks. So now we know she is definitely going to be looking for them. Then there is a page where you have Miles Morales' father, Jefferson, letting the school know that he is back in Miles' life. Let them know that the reason why he was gone was because he was having a hard time dealing with the death of his wife. We also know that when he found out that Spider-Man was his son Miles, it made him freak out, plus made him think back to his life as an undercover S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. We learned all of that in our last video. Speaking of Miles, we see him out right now being Spider-Man and just swinging around town and still trying to process everything, like the fact that Peter Parker is alive again and that will not get resolved. Also that his dad used to be an undercover S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Either way, while he was swinging around town, he comes to find out that Electro and Sabretooth are fighting against each other. These are some characters we have not seen in a long time. They both had early appearances in the beginning of Phase 3 of Ultimate Marvel. Apparently, these two are fighting against each other, and at first, Miles was just going to watch them fight, but people's lives got put in danger. And so you have Spider-Man decide to jump back in there and hopefully stop these two from fighting against each other. The problem is that these two show that they can be too much for Spider-Man to handle, except that is when you have Cloak and Dagger appear at the scene to help out. Which makes sense because Bendis made the ultimate version to these characters and really want these characters to take off. Sadly, they don't, like their main Marvel Universe counterpart. They help out to take care of the two bad guys of the book. You then have Miles Morales ask for some dating advice. Well, some girl advice from Dagger. Remember that Miles told his girlfriend Kate Bishop that he was Spider-Man and she freaked out. Now we also found out that her parents are Hydra agents, and of course Spider-Man doesn't know that yet. He is asking what he should do because he hasn't heard from Kate Bishop since he told her about him being Spider-Man. Miles finds out that apparently Dagger doesn't like her and thinks that he can do better with someone else. Dagger tells him to just go over there and talk to her and walk her through this big moment. And so you have Miles Morales go back to his dorm room to get some clothes so that he can go see Kate Bishop. You have Genki tell Miles Morales that Kate Bishop has not been in school all day. No one has seen her, except Miles Morales still thinks that he should go see her, and Genki tells him that it will not go well. And Genki is correct about the fact that it's not going to go well because you have Miles Morales go there to the home of Kate Bishop, except of course she is not there. And so you have Kate's dad let Miles in, and it seems that maybe the two of them are going to bond and hopefully Miles will be able to talk to Kate. Except again, he does not know her parents are Hydra agents, except Kate's dad reveals that he knows Miles Morales is Spider-Man, and Kate Bishop was not the one who told her parents that he was Spider-Man. Then the water he was drinking had something in there to knock out Miles. Now remember, those spider twins I was talking about earlier and the ones that Maria Hill was looking for, well, we actually pick up with them as they are breaking into an old S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Remember that thanks to Galactus attacking the Earth, the American government thought that S.H.I.E.L.D. failed at doing their job, which was protecting the world from threats, except they never thought to plan for an attack from a being from another universe. Either way, with S.H.I.E.L.D. gone, all of their tech is laying around in different warehouses. So these two are breaking into to take some of the stuff, or really a special item. Except while they are stealing some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s old stuff, well, you have Spider-Woman appear. This is, of course, Jessica Drew, the clone of Peter Parker, and at this point, she was going with the name Black Widow. We saw her change her name in the all-new Ultimates run. Well, she tries to take on the Spider Twins, but of course, at first, it seems that she may be able to take these guys on. Well, they show that they are too much for her to handle, and it ends with her losing and her being taken in by the Spider Twin. Back to Miles Morales' problem, well, you have Jefferson, the father to Miles Morales, come home and wondering where his son is at, only to realize that his son is missing or something is wrong, so he tries to call his son. The problem is that Miles Morales left his phone in his dorm room, so Genki sees that Miles Morales' father is calling, meaning that Genki knows something could be up, but before he could think about it, you have Judge stop by. Judge was this character who used to be a roommate to both Miles and Genki in the early days of Miles Morales' run as Spider-Man, except moved out because he knew the boys were hiding a secret, but did not know what, and hated the fact that they were hiding things from him, so he moved out. But when he stopped by to tell Genki that he knows Miles Morales is Spider-Man and they were terrible at hiding things. After speaking of Miles Morales, we see that he is waking up after being knocked out by Kate Bishop's father. When he does wake up, well, he wakes up to Kate Bishop and she tells him everything. That basically her parents is Hydra agents, and also that she wasn't the one who told her parents that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. Her sister did, because remember, after she found out, she ran over and told her sister about it because she was freaking out. She tries to tell Miles that she did not know this was going to happen and she loves him, but for Miles, he doesn't care and wants out of all of this. Now, while he is talking to Kate Bishop about this whole situation, well, that is when you have different Hydra agents going around and capturing people close to Miles. So that means Miles' father Jefferson, Genki, and I'm guessing Genki's mother too. And so you have Miles being able to break out of his binds and thinking that he is going to be able to escape from this place. Except when he gets to the door, he is greeted by Kate Bishop's father and tells Miles that they have captured people close to him. He will do whatever they want, or they are of course going to kill Miles Morales' friends and family. And you have Kate Bishop's father talking about how Hydra is trying to change the world. The usual how Hydra is better for the world speech. That the old ways are hurting the earth. Except one of the Hydra agents talked about how someone is here and Kate Bishop's dad is freaking out. And so you have Miles trying to escape again, which to me makes sense. But at the same time, you have to think about the people who are close to him that have gotten captured by Hydra. Now, he doesn't get that far when it comes to escaping because he is shot down by some Hydra agents. Except before he passes out once more, that is when he is greeted by someone who I guess is running Hydra now, which of course would be Dr. Doom. This is confusing since Dr. Doom was part of the Future Foundation team but for Bendis, I guess not. Before we can learn how in the world Doctor Doom is controlling Hydra or why he is working with Hydra, we have to switch over to Judge, who walks into the dorm room of Genki and Miles to see that the room has been trashed and the two of them could be missing. This is where things get confusing because we see Doctor Doom is holding on to Miles Morales and Jessica Drew. He says he wants to get revenge against Miles for evading Latveria, which I don't remember. Also, he wants to learn more about Miles and Jessica and maybe to replicate their powers to other people. Back to Judge, we see him going to the home of Miles Morales to find out that the house is also a wreck, giving Judge the idea that maybe something is really going on with Miles. Except while he is leaving the house, he is confronted by Cloak and Dagger, where he tells them that how he found the house like this in the dorm room was the same. Also tells Cloak and Dagger that he knows that Miles Morales is Spider-Man and could be in trouble. We then switch over to Miles Morales, showing that his powers have grown since he first got his powers. This is the moment we see him being able to use some kind of Venom shockwave to break out of the machine that he was trapped in and giving him the chance to fight against Doctor Doom, and the rest of Hydra agents are here in this room at the moment. We then pick up with Maria Hill, and remember how she was the cop that actually wanted to help Miles Morales out. Well, she is confronted by Judge, Cloak, Dagger, and the rest of the all-new Ultimates, asking for help to find Miles Morales because they all know he is in trouble. We then switch back to Miles Morales as he is fighting against the forces of Hydra and Doctor Doom. This is a man who is full of rage and trying to be a one-man army against them all. Tell you the truth, this is a very strong moment for Miles Morales because he is giving them a beating like no other, except he has to stop what he is doing when Kate Bishop's father threatens to kill Jessica Drew if Miles Morales doesn't stop what he is doing. Switching back to the heroes and Maria Hill, who are trying to find out where Miles Morales is at, we also know that they are being helped by Frank Quad, who was a character that was introduced to us in his second Ultimate Spider-Man run that came after Ultimatum, when we still had Peter Parker. He was kind of like what Maria Hill is to Miles Morales. Then another cop comes in and tells everyone that they may have a possible location where Miles Morales could be held at. So you have them all walk through Cloak to head there. Then the book closes on with the whole group walking into the warehouse to find Miles Morales, knocking Doctor Doom out, and the rest of the heroes finding out that Miles Morales was able to save Jessica Drew and also Hydra and all of Doctor Doom's forces too. Then he goes on to free his father, Genki, and Genki's mother as well. Also, he breaks up with Kate Bishop since it was her family that got him and everyone he loves into this mess. Except the book closes on Miles Morales and the rest of what is left of Ultimate Marvel looking into the sky, seeing the incursions happening. Of course, this leads into Ultimate's End and Secret Wars as well. But this is where So for the final Ultimate book, until they bring him back here in a few years, we pick up which to me is Ultimate Punisher. How he thought he should have stopped something from happening, like he knew it was going to happen. Then we see him setting up a sniper to get ready to kill a bunch of heroes who are about to have some kind of civil war. This is letting us know that these are a bunch of heroes from both the Ultimate Marvel universe and the main Marvel universe. And the question is, why are the two sides about to fight against each other? Well, we have to jump back in time that leads us up to this moment. This is where we get a page where basically it explains what happened in Secret Wars 2015. Doctor Doom got the power of the Beyonders and made a world known as Battleworld. Each part of a land in Battleworld is its own reality of different Marvel events, the big ones and the small ones. Some other things to make you wonder, what if your favorite Marvel story went a little bit differently? This one is known as Manhattan, and it is a little bit different from the others. We literally pick up on that with Spider-Man from the main Marvel universe, that this is the same Peter Parker from the main Marvel universe, who is swinging around town like it is supposed to be a normal day. But then he hears a boom, goes down there and finds out the Ultimate Serpent Squad are attacking this place. This is giving us a hint that this part of Battleworld is a combination of both the main Marvel universe and the Ultimate Marvel universe, because we see the Ultimate Serpent Squad hear from the Ultimate Power storyline getting ready to fight against Peter Parker. We get more proof that this is a combination of both worlds, where you have the all-new Ultimates appear, not the whole team. You only have Cloak, Dagger, Spider-Woman, and Bombshell, leaving you wondering where Kitty Pryde and Miles Morales are at, because they were part of this team when we were covering them earlier. Except you have Spider-Man begin to question Spider-Woman, because he knows that this is a combination of both universes. The last time he talked to Ultimate Spider-Woman, she told him that she was a clone of Ultimate Peter Parker, and she tells him that the whole world knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, because after he died, the whole world found out. He freaks out and leaves because apparently there is some big meeting he is supposed to be at. This is the moment we learn that there is some meeting between the heroes from the Ultimate Marvel universe and heroes from the main Marvel universe. We get to see some familiar faces that we have not seen because they are dead or missing after the last big Ultimate event. They are having this meeting at the Triskelion, and for Nick Fury, since this is his home or his SHIELD base, he thinks he is in charge of everything. Now let me tell you now, both the Tony Starks from the main Marvel universe and the Ultimate Marvel universe are going to play important roles in this book. Something else to point out is that everyone thinks that Tony Stark from the Ultimate Marvel universe is at fault for the reason both of these universes have combined in the first place. This is where we have to jump back to what could have led to the two universes combining, starting with the idea that Tony Stark from the Ultimate Marvel universe was called by Dr. Chow, because Chow was able to open the portal to another dimension, except he was told to close the portal before anything happens. He calls Tony Stark from the Ultimate Marvel universe, hoping that he can change whoever was in charge of this project's minds, except he agrees with them about closing this portal before something really bad happens. Sadly, before the portal closes, there is a huge flash of light, meaning that something happened. Of course, when Ultimate Marvel Tony Stark turns around, he sees his counterpart from the main Marvel universe in the same room. After the meeting, you have the two sides go their separate ways. Each side is going to work on figuring out how to go back to their own universe, mainly because they don't trust each other. To their minds, Doctor Doom made two separate universes for them on Battleworld, and Ultimate Tony Stark did something to combine the two universes together. Now, the question both sides have when they leave the meeting is if Doctor Doom knows what happened, and that is when we see the Thor Corps appear. Now, the Thor Corps is kind of like Doctor Doom's police force on Battleworld, and their goal is to make sure that people don't cross to other parts of Battleworld. So no one here can leave and, let's say, go to Old Man Logan's world. You have the Thor mention that Doctor Doom knows what had happened and blames them for their two universes being combined into one. except you have the Thors mention that Dr. Doom doesn't want them to do anything and leave everything alone, except they're having this conversation with the heroes from the main Marvel universe, and they keep asking if they do find a way to fix this, can they show Dr. Doom and change his mind? Sadly, the Thors say no, but Hawkeye from the main Marvel universe keeps pushing the issue, and the Thors actually kill him as a sign what happens when you deny Dr. Doom's orders. After that, you have the two Tony Starks meeting up and agreeing to work together to figure out how to fix this, even if the Thors told them not to, so of course, they are not following orders. This is also a big moment for me because you have Ultimate Marvel Tony try to give main Marvel Tony a flask. But main Marvel Tony is upset by it because remember that main Marvel Universe Tony used to be an alcoholic but gave up drinking. So he's mad that Ultimate Marvel Tony is even offering him a drink. Either way, you have Ultimate Marvel learn from this and realize what he did was wrong and agreed to work together to fix this as a way to disagree to Dr. Doom's orders. At the same time, we see other heroes going out doing their own things while both Tony Starks and whoever else tries to fix the problem. For example, Peter Parker, he goes to the home of Ultimate Aunt May and Ultimate Gwen Stacy, which they have met before because of the Spider-Man storyline where Peter Parker came into this universe. Except this time, it is going to be him kind of staying longer than he did last time and build a bigger bond with them. For the two of them, it is nice to have a Peter Parker back in their life. Since the Ultimate Peter Parker is dead, they don't even reference the other Peter Parker we saw in the Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man book. Now, let's not forget about the Punisher, because remember, the beginning of this book where the Punisher was about to shoot all of the heroes he can, that takes place in the future. So this is the beginning point that will lead up to that point. He is in jail at the Raft trying to do his time, except that is the moment where you have a Hulk crash into the prison. Since this Hulk is gray, we know that this is of course Ultimate Hulk, and they will say that down the road as well. Now the question is, why the Hulk was thrown into the prison, and how was he thrown into the prison? And when I mean down the road, I literally mean in the next page, because you have Nick Fury talking to the main Marvel Universe Maria Hill, asking which Hulk it is, and the green one is the smart one and from the main Marvel Universe, and the dumb one is the gray one. Also that we learn what threw the Hulk through the prison, which was the main Marvel Universe Hulk. The question is, why are the two of them fighting? And you have Nick Fury suit up with the Hulkbuster squad that was formed in Ultimates comics at one point, comes out and tries to fight against both of the Hulks. But at the same time, the book reminds us that Punisher is going to be very important, so we get some panels of him. But either way, we see that all of the heroes from both universes are coming here to stop the Hulks. Now sadly, we don't get the chance to see the fight between the Hulks and the heroes from both the Ultimate Marvel Universe and the main Marvel Universe. We actually pick up with the main Marvel Universe Hulk being held in a prison cell by Ultimate Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. Now this moment is something I want to point out before we learn why the Hulks were fighting for. Nick Fury is more aggressive than usual. He has been aggressive before, but this time he is more aggressive towards everyone than he usually is. He's mad at the heroes because we learned when all of the fighting went down, the heroes made things worse rather than better. There was a huge prison break and also that a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents died. He speaks about the idea that they are reaching the tipping point. After all the yelling, you have Bruce Banner talked about telling Nick Fury why the two Hulks were fighting against each other. That while the main Marvel Universe Hulk was doing his own research trying to figure out how to separate the two universes, he was confronted by his Ultimate Marvel Universe counterpart, and this is the moment that leads to the fight. See, Ultimate Marvel Hulk thinks that the main Marvel Universe Hulk should not help out with fixing the issue. Their problem is that they're always trying to help, but their help leads both their respective universes into more trouble. You have the main Marvel Universe Hulk try to convince Ultimate Marvel Hulk that they can do it, but it leads to Ultimate Hulk just getting angry and then changing into his Hulk form and beginning a battle between the two characters. The story goes back to everyone right now listening to what main Marvel Universe Bruce Banner had to say. This is Nick Fury kind of stating that he's not going to let this Hulk out and going to keep him locked up for a very long time. Except the main Marvel Universe Tony is upset with the idea and asks Nick Fury to reconsider the idea of doing that. Of course, Nick Fury says no, and Tony Stark walks out. But Emma Frost from the main Marvel Universe tells Nick Fury that they should worry about Tony Stark. Now, let's not forget that Punisher is one of the main points of this book, so we have to switch back to the Ultimate Marvel Punisher. This moment is a quick one, and what I mean is that he is confronted by the main Marvel Universe Punisher. Now, this Punisher thinks that the Ultimate Marvel Punisher is a Skrull. He has no idea about the two universes being combined. He is thinking of the Skrull invasion, because in their universe, that had already happened. Except you have the Ultimate Marvel Punisher kill the main Marvel Universe Punisher. Punisher is not done with killing people, because you have Bombshell, who is part of the all-new Ultimates. We see her fighting against the Wrecking Crew, which is from the main Marvel Universe. Except in the middle of the fight, out of nowhere, they are killed by a sniper. Of course, that sniper is the Punisher, and this would make sense because the Punisher is usually known as someone who kills bad guys. Except then, we see him point the sniper towards Bombshell, getting ready to kill her too. Getting back to the prison cell that is being used to hold the Hulk, we see some scientists working on him, but out of nowhere the lights get turned off. Except when they get turned back on, well, the Hulk is no longer there, making you wonder what happened. Well, main Marvel Universe Tony Stark sent his suit as a way to grab main Marvel Universe Hulk because he can help fix the main problem, splitting the two universes apart from each other. So you have Nick Fury call in a few heroes, both from the Ultimate Marvel Universe and the main Marvel Universe, where you have the team of heroes going to Avengers Tower hoping to find Tony Stark and Hulk there. This is something to point out because this is not just the main Marvel Universe Tony Stark and Hulk. This is also the Ultimate Marvel Universe Tony Stark helping them out. Now, when the heroes get to Avengers Tower, well, Spider-Man's spider sense goes off, and for a very good reason too. The two Tony Starks had sent out an army of Iron Man armors in computer pilot mode, getting ready to attack the heroes. Well, they do attack, but while the battle is going on, you have Captain America realize that something is up here, that these armies of Iron Men are being used to distract the heroes, and you have the main Marvel Universe Tony Stark call up Nick Fury to tell him that Nick Fury has no power over him and that they will continue to work on figuring out the problem without the help of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. Switching back to the Punisher, we see him trying to take out Bombshell, and this leads into a little battle between the two sides, where it seems that the two of them are going to battle it out for a while. At the same time, you have Bombshell thinking that the Punisher should technically be on her side, so she is confused as to why he is trying to kill her. He is almost able to kill her, except she does get some help from someone else, and for a moment I thought it was going to be Ultimate Venom. Except no, it is not. It is the rest of Bombshell team, which of course is the all-new Ultimates. Well, some of them. So Ultimate Cloak and Dagger, what at first thought is going to be a quick battle, with Cloak being able to grab the Punisher and actually being able to hold him for a moment, except the Punisher is able to escape from Cloak's cape and leaves, making the all-new Ultimates wonder what in the world is going on, but also how in the world was the Punisher able to escape. Except before they are able to chase down the Punisher, you have the Ultimate Iron Man armor appear asking for the all-new Ultimates to help out. We then switch over to Doctor Doom, who has the powers of the Beyonder, where he is greeted by Valerie Richards, who is the leader of his science division. She explains that the region the heroes are in were made by Doom, that there was no dimensional rift that pushed the two universes together, that Doctor Doom meant for that region of Battleworld to come out like that. You then have Valerie tell Doctor Doom that tempers are rising, that the two Tony Starks have found a way to fix the issue of the two dimensions being together, except one Tony wants to show their findings to Doctor Doom, and the other one knows that Doctor Doom will kill them for disobeying the orders. This leads to the civil war we saw in the beginning of this video. So now we are back to the beginning of our video, where we have the civil war happening. The Punisher, of course, being the one ready to shoot all other heroes while they fight, except Valerie is wondering if she and Doctor Doom should stop the fighting before it gets worse. Doctor Doom says no, but Valerie is confused because she is afraid that something could change everything about that region of Battleworld. Of course, that is when we see that Miles Morales has finally arrived in this region, someone who has been missing this whole story. Now, this is Miles Morales from the original Ultimate Marvel Universe. I know what you're thinking. What do I mean when you say the original Ultimate Marvel Universe? Well, this is a region of Battleworld. It has pieces from the main Marvel Universe and the Ultimate Marvel Universe. The people here are about the same thing too. They are pieces from both universes, which explains why we have an Ultimate Captain America here. He was killed at the end of Ultimate Catalysm. You have Emma Frost, who is basically the clone of the main Marvel Universe. Emma Frost read the mind of Miles Morales and begins to share it with everyone in the room. Miles Morales explains that this is a world that was made by Doctor Doom to be a zoo, a battle arena, to make the two sides fight against each other, that Doctor Doom did this to have the heroes murder each other, that he is doing this as a way to punish them, that this world is showing how heroes are ignorant, that they are so ignorant they did not know this world is actually fake, and Doctor Doom is the real enemy. So everything that has happened here is because Doctor Doom wanted to happen like that. Also, that Miles Morales left the main Secret War storyline to come here to tell everyone, to show everyone that they are going at this all wrong. So everyone is having a hard time believing this because to them, they just found out the world they are in is fake. Also that they are also fakes as well, which is something hard for them to swallow. There is even a point that the Hulk doesn't believe it and wants to kill Miles Morales, except you have the Punisher actually stop the Hulk to let Miles Morales keep talking. Then you have someone else appear to show more proof that Doctor Doom made this reality to just make the heroes fight against each other. You have Old Man Logan appear and tell the heroes that everything Miles Morales says is true, and people are confused because now they're seeing a Logan who is old and telling everyone that Miles Morales is telling the truth here. Except before the heroes are able to continue to talk about this situation, well, you have the Thor Corp appear and are planning on stopping the heroes, except the heroes are able to escape through Ultimate Cloak before the Thor Corp is able to stop them. Then you have the Punisher think that he could actually do some heavy damage to the Thor's Corp, except of course he doesn't. You didn't have Thor Corp fire a blast to kill the Punisher, and he does die. So this is how the book ends. And honestly, this is a crazy ending for the end of the book, where you have all of the heroes thinking that it will be a good idea to bomb rush Doctor Doom and hoping that they can stop all of this or stop him. Except also, that is when you have Doctor Doom decide that it is time to get rid of this universe and make it go all away forever. So you have the heroes beginning to disappear one by one, showing us how powerful Doctor Doom is truly. Now this also confuses everything because Miles Morales is very important in the main Secret War storyline. So to see him here in this book saving the clone of the Ultimate Marvel Universe really doesn't make sense. How he can be here and be there at the same time. Either way, the universe is unmade and we get a bright light. When Miles Morales wakes up, well, he wakes up in the main Marvel universe. This was the book that lets us know, well, one of the two books to let us know that Miles Morales has joined the main Marvel universe. Also that his mother is alive again, which is huge because she was killed by the second Ultimate Venom, and it was a huge character development for Miles Morales. But now she is back, and so is Genki, Judge, and Lana Aka Bombshell. But that is the end of Ultimate End. And so if you do like today's comic book video, please hit the like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's video.